Hey guys, welcome to part 10 of What If Naruto Was Neglected Heir of Uzumaki clan. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe as it inspires me to make more such videos. So let's get started. Chapter 28. Uzumaki Compound. Why are you going through my clothes? Azumi asked, standing at the door of her room. Naruto had invaded her privacy, and was now going through her clothes without her permission. Naruto stopped what he was doing and turned to face Azumi. He had thought he would come and take what he wants and then leave without seeing her. Really, he didn't want to talk to her at this time. He wanted to focus on the war and other things. Conversing with her would bring the subject of what happened between them, and he didn't want to talk about it, not now at least. The Uzumaki clan head shook his head, clearing his thoughts. I thought I was going get to my business without your eyes on me. Azumi walked up to her clan head and stared into his eyes. What are you doing? You know, I too deserve some privacy. That is amusing. Naruto said. You go through my stuff all the time and we have seen each other naked. There is no need to hide anything. It isn't like I haven't seen you wearing these things anyway. The redhead said with a shrug. But I guess I should have spoken to you first. You were avoiding that. Azumi said. Admittedly. Naruto said. I'm looking for some clothes for Uchiha. She is by my apartment, and is in need of some clothes. I thought yours would do. Uchiha as in Kumo's Jinchuriki. Naruto nodded. She is an enemy. Azumi paused as something came to mind. I shouldn't be surprised, you went all the way to Kumo just to see her. I didn't think the day would come when I would actually say that you like someone, a woman no less. You don't sound happy. Naruto noted. Of course, I'm not happy. Azumi more or less snapped. You brought another woman back to your apartment, and you were planning on giving her my clothes without telling me. Naruto closed his eyes. This was the reason he had avoided home and hadn't wanted Azumi to see him. He was avoiding this kind of talk. It wasn't necessary at this time. Naruto turned around and went towards Azumi's bed. He settled on the edge of the bed and motioned for Azumi to sit next to him. Azumi, I care for you and I do not want you to have that kind of look on your face. We have lived together for so long, and you've never given me that kind of look. Naruto said. Ask what you want to ask, and I will answer you. After which, I will head to my apartment, bring Uchiha here, and then we will talk more. Is that fine with you, Azumi? Meanwhile, there is an intruder, Hokage-sama. An Anbi said to Minato. If the man was telling him this, it meant that they didn't have this intruder in custody and was still at large. Considering that they were at war, he could only think it was someone dangerous. It could not be Uchiha, could it? Minato shook his head. Naruto had that under control. It had to be someone else from either Kumo or Uegakure. Have you identified the intruder? The man nodded before speaking. He is wearing the Akatsuki cloak. We know where he is but we cannot get to him. Minato got up from his chair before disappearing. He appeared atop of the Hokage Tower and looked around the beautiful streets that didn't have any trouble in them. Not long ago, they were running around in fear after Kumo and Uwa's Jinchuriki appeared, and attempted to destroy the village. It was calm now. Calm before the storm perhaps. The Yondaime looked up into the sky. He saw a person floating high above the village and suddenly got a chilling feeling about what the person was trying to do. It was the Akatsuki as the Amu had said, but what did they want? Were they here because Konoha had taken Uchiha from them? Get me someone who has a contract with summons that can fly. Minato ordered in a hurried tone. Hi. The Anbi disappeared. Before the Yondaime could think anything further, the black spiraling vortex started flashing behind him with hands out to grab him. Just like last time, Minato disappeared in a flash of yellow. He appeared in a secluded place, but his mind was back at the village. Minato looked at the person who appeared before him, just like last time. I figured that this day would come. The Yondaime said. But I never thought it would be in this situation. You're of the Akatsuki? What are you trying to do here? Konoha is going to be judged for standing in the way of peace. Obito stated calmly. There is nothing you can do to stop it. Minato frowned. That was something that he didn't want to see happening. He could not allow the leaf to be destroyed under his watch. He was the Yondaime Hokage, Konoha's leader. Still, was there a jutsu that could destroy the hidden leaf? He knew one or two kinjutsu that could do the trick, but did the Akatsuki have something like that? Boom. With Minato's attention focused on the explosion, Obito lunged towards his former sensei, both his hands held out. He wanted to grab the man and warp him away to his dimension. Minato's reaction was quick, and on instinct he leapt backwards. He managed to avoid the masked shinobi. Konoha. His beloved Konoha. What had happened to it? Who could have caused such an explosion? Minato was worried, disturbingly worried about the explosion that had shook the very ground he had been standing on. What was even going to happen to the Jinchuriki they had captured? What would happen if Kumo and Iwa suddenly appeared in this kind of situation? It would be a loss to Konoha. A reality that could not be allowed. Minato knew that if Konoha lost, he was the first person they would kill and Naruto would follow him shortly. Minato's sharpened eyes turned towards the masked shinobi before he took out his three-pronged kunai. Even you can be serious. Well, this situation is a Hokage's worst nightmare. Obito said. But you don't have to be worried about anything. We will recreate this world once we get all the Bajoa. You can have your perfect world. There is no such thing as a perfect world. Even I am willing to admit that. Humans are not perfect, we always make mistakes, as such there can never be a perfect world, unless it is in your dream. Minato stated in a hardened tone. You don't know how Obito didn't finish what he was trying to say because just as he was talking, Minato suddenly disappeared in a flash of yellow. The masked Uchiha didn't even get the chance to blink before he felt something cold piercing through his back. Last time we fought, I managed to get a few pieces about how your jutsu works. Naruto also mentioned that it was related to Kakashi's Kamyu. Yours apparently requires touch to warp away the target and Kakashi's doesn't, Minato stated, holding a kunai that was inside Obito's back. He was also holding out his right hand on the palm of his hand, he was forming a Rasengan. I've not told anyone this, but the Hiraishin seal does not disappear. It stays on you forever. With Naruto, chains pierced through a broken wall, creating a small hole. Naruto slowly got through the hole. His body was surrounded by chakra chains, barrier visible around him. He wasn't harmed in any way. The Uzumaki stared at the scene around him, a dead look on his eyes. How come he hadn't noticed anything? He was just walking along the streets of the Hidden Leaf and then it happened. Was he high on thinking about Yujido and his earlier conversation with Izumi? He let his guard drop, and this happened. Konoha was nothing more than a crater and the compound he had viewed as a fortress was just flat ground. Uzumaki compound. Karin. Izumi. His mother. His clan. They were all gone. Konoha was gone. He could sense a few chakra signatures, but none of which he cared for. Everything he liked was gone. Everything. Nothing remained. For a moment, Naruto thought of just allowing his mind to loosen the brakes that have kept him sane for the past years. But he could not bring himself to lose it. Yet, he felt something in his heart that he has never felt before. It was a tingling feeling that gripped his heart painfully. It made him fall on his knees, holding his chest. What was this? Pain? Was this the pain of losing someone? Was this what other people felt when he slaughtered their loved ones? It was a unique feeling. He hadn't felt pain for his team, it had been guilt, but it didn't bring him to this situation. Here, there was nothing he could do. His power was not meant to protect other people. He had trained to protect himself and to kill his enemies. His family, his beloved sister, they were not covered by his pathetic power. Had it been all for nothing? A grin slowly formed on Naruto's lips, a mad grin. He wanted nothing more than to kill someone, to murder someone, just to explode. Nature would not do it. It would smooth his soul if he found someone to take his frustrations on. Just then, he sensed a powerful chakra, and then slowly got up. The chains that had been around his body dispersed before he vanished in a swirl of intense flames. He appeared in the center of Konoha, a large crater that once was the former great village called the Hidden Leaf. It had been reduced to this by that person. Normally, Naruto would run away from a person with such power, but without his clan, his sister Izumi, his mother, or even Yujido, it felt as if there was nothing else to live for. The Hidden Leaf could not even praise him to his achievements because it was good as dead. Naruto's eyes stared at the 6 paths of pain with eyes wide, a little bit of a senile look on his face. It was because of this person that he lost everything. This person had to die. Uzumaki Naruto. Tendao started calmly. You're a shinobi who has gone around spreading pain and death to shinobi all over the elemental nations, and yet when you have been made to experience the same pain, you get to look so murderous. Naruto's eyes narrowed. I do no go around killing innocent children. The redhead, Uzumaki said in a deathly silent tone. People I have killed were not innocent. And you get to decide that. You're not God, but a human. Tendao said. Can you continue in the same way after experiencing pain? You are experiencing it now, aren't you? I think now we talk on the same level. I have no desire to talk to you. Naruto said. I see. Tendao said. We do not wish to cause any more trouble. The Jinchuriki you have, give them to us, and the Kyuubi, we will not have a reason to fight any more if you do so. This is necessary for our peace. Naruto stared at the 6 paths for a long moment. He normally wouldn't fight against such odds, especially when it was 6 against 1, and he had to go against the Rinnegan. He didn't know much about the Taijutsu to engage it without any fear. It was unlike the Sharingan, but at the moment, he did not care. He could fight recklessly as he wished. There was nothing else to live for. It appears that you're not going to give us what we want. Tendao said before the animal path summoned beasts into the field. A careless Naruto didn't think of running away. What was the point of running away from the battle? Everything he valued was destroyed along with the Hidden Leaf. There was nothing else he could run off to. Still summons? Isn't it enough that it is 6 against 1? You should not complain. You can summon the Kyuubi. It is the most powerful Bajoa. Tendao said calmly. Was he just being baited to summon the Kyuubi so that they could defeat him and then take the Bajoa away? Naruto shook his head. He didn't care at the moment. They could take it if they wanted to. Kochiyos no Jutsu. Kurama appeared in a large plume of smoke before staring at the enemy. The Rinnegan. The Bajoa said. This was something he never thought he would see again, not after the Sage of 6 Paths. You handle the pets, I want to kill him myself. Naruto said to Kurama as he took steps towards the 6 Paths. There was no need to waste time with dancing around needlessly, but the way he was going to do was going to cost him lots of chakra, much more than he could afford. This had to be a necessary sacrifice since he could not see any other way of going about business in this battlefield that was once a land for houses. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment before opening them, fully opened, but with a sharp gaze about them. Without thinking too much about the strategy, the redhead sped towards the 6 paths. None of them moved, with the Prita paths spearheading their defense. When Naruto reached them, he leapt into the air, before spinning around. He lashed a flame-engulfed right kick towards the Prita path's face. The path held out both its hands, creating a barrier. When Naruto's attack collided with the barrier, it came to a dead stop as the flames were being absorbed. Naruto thought of jumping away, but before he could do so, the animal path suddenly appeared above him. Naruto raised both his hands in anticipation of an attack. He wanted to block it, but the attack never came. Instead, the Prita path grabbed his right foot and slammed him straight into the ground. The redhead crashed loudly with his back, creating a small amount of debris. A smoke bomb exploded before Naruto burst out of the smoke, lunging towards the animal path with his long sword. He was sure he had caught it, but he was left surprised when the path ducked under his swing. It would have separated its head from the shoulders if it had struck. Still in his surprise, The Prita path flashed in front of him, its knees slightly bent before it landed a brutal punch on his chest. This was followed by a kick straight on his forehead from the animal path. The attack sent the redhead shooting backwards like a bullet. As he was flying backwards, the Asura path launched a missile straight at him. It was upon him in a second. It seemingly hit him head-on before exploding in a loud boom, creating a cloud of flames. A few seconds later, a bruised Naruto landed on the ground on his knees. He spat out some blood before getting up. He held his long sword with his right hand and formed single-hand seal with his left hand. Small orbs of flames lit up around him, forming 6 small balls that floated in a circle around his upper body. It would require a great deal of concentration and chakra to keep them burning, but it was his piece of defense and attack against enemy attacks. Without wasting any time, Naruto darted towards the 6 paths once more. None of the paths took off to engage him, they all stayed their ground in a defensive formation as their opponent rushed towards them. Naruto jumped into the ground as he neared them and pointed his blade straight at Tendao, who was in the middle surrounded by the other paths. One of the balls surrounding him sped towards the paths in blinding speeds. The Prita path jumped up to meet with the small orb of flames as Nagato didn't want to risk losing his formation. The path held out its hands before a barrier formed around it. When the jutsu crashed into the barrier, it started being absorbed, but Naruto snapped his fingers and the jutsu exploded. Boom! The explosion was huge and resounding. The flames expanded within a second, creating a large cloud of intense flames above the paths. The flames surrounded the Prita path's entire body. Naruto suddenly flashed behind the animal path as the flames above them burned. He swung his sword in a blinding strike that cleaved through the air towards the path's neck, but the path dodged the strike even though it wasn't looking at him, and he had caught it from behind. Naruto didn't have a second to be surprised as the animal path lifted up its left foot in the blink of an eye. The foot went straight towards Naruto's gut, but the one of the flame orbs met with the foot. The moment it did, it exploded in a fiery of shrapnel that tore through the ground with intense heat. Naruto suddenly burst out of the flames, surrounded by chakra chains with a barrier around him. He landed a couple of feet away, but wasn't able to plan for the next attack as the Asura path flashed right in front of him with a chainsaw heading straight towards his forehead. The chainsaw crashed into Naruto's barrier, but it didn't break through as Naruto jumped away once again. It appears that when you use those nasty orbs you can't create another one easily. So that means you have 4 more uses. Tendao said, seeing that Naruto only had 4 orbs left behind. It also seems that they react instinctively to a movement in the form of an attack. An incredibly curious and powerful jutsu. Well, he was going against someone who was hailed as the greatest fire user in the Hidden Leaf. He was obviously going to see more jutsus, but before him, ninjutsu was still useless. It also seems that one absorbs chakra. Naruto said, looking at the Prita path. But at least I have destroyed one of you, so it's 6-5 more T-. He wasn't able to continue speaking as the Asura path launched a missile towards him. The redhead sped towards the missile, with his right hand firmly on the handle of his blade. As he neared the missile, he fell down on his knees, sliding through the ground quickly with his sword raised up. The sword cut through the missile, splitting it in half. The 2 pieces exploded as they went towards different directions. Naruto found himself surrounded by the 3 paths before he could even get up from his position. Chakra chains burst through from the ground around the redhead, but the paths managed to jump up to avoid the chains. As they were jumping up, the Asura path launched another missile. This time Naruto could only erect a chakra chain enforced barrier around himself as the missile rocketed towards him. The rocket collided into the barrier before setting off an explosion of mixed with dust and powerful gusts of winds as well as some red and black flames. The debris took about a minute to settle down, and when they did, Naruto was on his knees in a large crater, still surrounded by his small orbs of red flames. He hadn't been hurt by the explosion. The animal path came crashing down at him, but Naruto was able to dodge its punch by leaping back slightly. The punch connected with the ground, but before the path could straighten up, Naruto was upon it, his sword flashing. But before he could do anything, the Prita path flashed right above him, its right foot weaving through the air, heading straight towards his forehead. Knowing that it would just absorb the jutsu, Naruto didn't use one of his orbs, instead the brutal kick slammed into his forehead, sending him flying backwards. He never got to hit the ground as he was suddenly grabbed by something invisible in mid-air. His orbs hadn't reacted to it. Naruto stared down at the Prita path. I was certain that I had removed that thing, he said calmly. Next time he wasn't going to limit the explosion because he was closer to it. He would let it rip, knowing that it could incinerate anything it touches. He had limited its power because he didn't want to do anything suicidal like getting hit with his own jutsus. He just had to make sure he was setting it off when he was in a good position. The Asura path was next to land and next to the animal path whilst the other four remained a good distance away. Before the two could do anything, the atmosphere became increasingly hot before flames exploded out of nowhere. The flames covered the animal that was holding him and then some. The animal let out a shrieking cry before disappearing from existence. The two paths quickly tried to jump away when the flames started to flash towards them, but as it appeared that they had escaped, chains burst out of the flames, grabbing both by their feet. Flames spread through the chains before catching the two whilst they were still in mid-air. Once the flames caught the two, they exploded into two clouds of intense flames that burned for about a couple of seconds before being pulled back into the flames that had exploded earlier. After a minute the flames dispersed, leaving just Naruto alone on his knees. The redhead got up and held out his right hand. Katan, majestic incinerating flames. Another orb of flames formed about the palm of his hand. The other four that were around Naruto moved, and then circled around the one on the palm of his hand. Naruto then started to run towards the remaining four. Then hurled the jutsu straight at the four paths. It's useless, the Prita path said as it jumped to meet with the jutsu. Just when it was about hit the path's barrier, the orb suddenly burst into all directions before surrounding all the paths, but one still crashed into the Prita path's barrier before it was absorbed. Boom! The other four exploded into a large column of flames that was accompanied by powerful gusts of winds and debris. The column was so big that Naruto had to jump away to keep a safe distance between him and the flames. The flames created an intense heat around the large crater that had been the hidden leaf before Pain released his jutsu. The flames continued to burn for more than a minute. Tendao jumped out of the flames with the Naraka path held firmly on his right hand. The flames burnt off both his and the Naraka path's cloaks. The Prita path joined them a moment later before the flames suddenly disappeared into thin air, leaving just the heat they'd produced earlier. The other paths were destroyed. Nagato could not even revive them because there was nothing left of their bodies. When has he ever faced such an opponent? You truly are a dangerous shinobi, Tendao said calmly. It has been an honor to fight you, Uzumaki Naruto. But this must come to an end. I agree with you on that note, Naruto said before stabbing his blade into the ground. He did fast hand seals before slamming both his hands on the ground. A moment later, it started trembling before exploding. Lava burst onto the surface covering a wide area. A few places still had some ground visible, but the intense heat made it unbearable for anyone to stand. The paths stood on safe ground and watched as their shoes melted. You're not human, Naruto said with cold eyes. He was on his knees. No human could survive this kind of condition, and the ground they were standing on a human would have run off moments ago due to the heat. Breathing was even difficult, because of the heat. This was just the kind of heat that could cook you alive within seconds. It was his killing jutsu. It seems that this is as far as you can go, Tendao said, ignoring Naruto's statement. Your jutsu created an inhumane environment. Any normal person would not survive this kind of heat. Although you're managing the heat, even you cannot stand it for far too long before succumbing to the heat. This was not his end, not like this. He had managed to deal with the others, but there were still 3 left. He would continue to fight. With that in mind, Naruto grabbed his blade and stood up firmly. The Deva path slammed its fist into the ground he stood on. The small rock shattered before the entire ground shook. Large boulders started to spring out from the lava. The Prita path lunged towards Naruto. It reached the redhead within seconds before jumping up slightly. It twisted around before trying to slam its right foot straight on Naruto's face. The Uzumaki leaned back slightly to avoid the fast kick, but before he could swing his blade, the Naraka path flashed behind him simultaneously. Deva path also flashed below the Prita path, its right fist heading straight towards his gut. The chains that burst out of the ground could only pierce through the chest of the path behind as the Deva path landed a brutal punch on his chest. Naruto winced slightly as his intestines twisted under the strain from the punch he had received. The Prita path tried to grab Naruto by his face with its right hand, but Naruto's blade suddenly pierced through its chest before flames burst out. How had he managed to move so fast without him being able to see anything? Tendao narrowed his eyes and saw formula marks. He quickly jumped away from the redhead and landed a safe distance away from the field Naruto had created. I see you activated your jutsu just around you. Since we appear to see your every movement, you must have realized that even if you activated it long ago, you may not have been able to land a hit. Tendao stated calmly. Naruto ignored the two paths dropping beside him as his sword disappeared. He held out his right hand and formed a small orb of flames. Katana Rasengan. He dashed towards the Deva path in blinding speed before jumping up as he neared. He attempted to slam the jutsu into the path, but he was suddenly blasted away by an invisible force. The Uzumaki clan head landed a distance away from the path. The redhead landed on both his feet before falling onto his knees. To keep his lava field activated, he had to be supplying chakra to maintain it, but he could not do that anymore. It didn't matter anymore, it had proved useless, and had cost him a lot of chakra. Bansha Tenon. With as much force as he could muster, Tendao pulled Naruto onto the path of his right hand. The redhead was grabbed by his throat, and then held tightly. You have impressive ninjutsu. Your jutsus are not what a normal person can do, but even with all that, it is meaningless before overwhelming power. The moment the man finished saying those words, he slammed Naruto down into the ground with so much force that the redhead was buried down into the ground. Naruto cursed as he tried to get up from the ground. He didn't get any further because Tendao slammed his foot on his chest, sending him back into the ground. The man kept his foot on Naruto's chest as a chakra rod formed quickly. He said nothing as he tried to pin the redhead down with the rod on his shoulder. Naruto brought out both his hands in an attempt to block the rod from doing any damage. He only got it to pierce through the palm of his right hand, drawing out blood. For a moment, Naruto forgot about everything. He was standing in the borders of defeat. When was the last time an enemy stood above him? He has decimated and dismantled his previous opponents with brutality, and now he was facing something he had never thought he would face again. For so long he has lived believing that he would never be defeated again, and that defeat meant death. This was death, right? He had already lost both Izumi and Karin. And now he was facing defeat. Yes, this was the end of him, his death. Well, at least he went out with a bang. Looking down at Naruto, the Deva path spoke, at least with this piece is a step closer to us. Upon hearing that, Naruto felt rage. Another madman going on a rampage, and then speaking about peace. Shinobi are truly hypocrites who only think they are right and everyone else is wrong. There is no peace in what you have done. In what the Tsukikage has done. I cannot disagree with that, but our actions will lead towards peace. The Deva path said. Just kill me already. Naruto said in calm tone. I do not want to listen to your nonsense. Nonsense? Tendao asked. Perhaps someone like you would call the quest of peace no minus. The Deva path suddenly burst into black flames before it could finish talking. The flames didn't burn it for far too long because he quickly released a small Shinra Tensei blasting the flames away. Both Minato and Itachi landed just away from Naruto and Tendao. The path of pain jumped away to make some distance between him and the enemy. I think I can handle things even in this state, Itachi. You need your full power for the plan to work anyway. The Yondaime Hokage said. The Uchiha nodded. That is a rather pitiful state you're in, Naruto. I never thought I'd see you in such a resigned state, he said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Minato namikaze. Tendao stated calmly. I see, it means that Madara lost if you are here. That is unexpected, but it means I just have to deal with you here, or otherwise you will become a problem in the future. Both you and your son need to be out of the picture. Minato said nothing. He flashed beside Naruto and kneeled before removing the rod on the palm of his right hand. Are you okay, Naruto? Are you trying to make a joke, father? Naruto asked. Is Itachi going after the real one? Oh, you already know that. Minato said. I'm also a clone. I know his location, and it won't take us too long to handle him. I understand that the only way to stop this one from attacking is to stop the real one. We just have to hold out for about a minute at least. I see. That was all Naruto said, but he didn't get up even though he could. He didn't feel like fighting anymore, not when Pain was still alive, and to think that he would have to be saved by Itachi of all people. It was just ridiculous. Meanwhile, when Itachi broke into Nagato's hiding place, the god of Amigakure quickly released a sharp rod straight for the Uka's gut. The rod hit dead on, but the Uchiha disappeared into a puff of smoke. Another clone, Nagato thought. Amaterasu. Black flames lit around Nagato's body. Within a second the jutsu was cast. The man didn't even let out a pain sound as the flames licked his skin with incredible heat. The flames were not only burning his body, but his walking machine as well. Shinra Tensei. Nagato was forced to cut off chakra flow to Tendao, leaving the path immobile as he focused on the situation threatening his life. The jutsu not only blasted the flames away, but it also shattered his walking machine, leaving him to drop to the ground on his weak feet. He wasn't given time to rest as a kunai was sent straight towards his forehead. Once again, he released a wordless Shinra Tensei to blast the kunai away from him. Before he could do anything else, another three-pronged kunai zipped past in front of him. There was a flash of yellow. The Yondaime slammed a racing Gan right on Nagato's chest. Itachi appeared from behind the god of Ame with a Kodaki firmly on his right hand, moving towards the man's neck. Minutes later, Naruto was still on the ground with his eyes closed as Minato spoke to Tsunade, Kakashi and Shikaku. He didn't feel like getting up. Itachi was standing just by his side, but quiet. He didn't feel like saying anything either. He could not even pity the redhead Uzumaki. He had lost something precious to him as well, his beloved brother. Nevertheless, he could not think too deeply about it, even though it hurt him. Kumigakure and Ill forces were marching towards the hidden leaf as he stood. They would soon be upon them. Konoha's forces were stationed just around the village, but there was nothing really that they could protect. Their loved ones were gone with the village. Even as he stood here, Itachi knew that the morale was low. Something needed to be done to lift them up, or when the enemy does arrive, they would be fighting a lost battle. Naruto didn't look as if he was in any position to fight. Aside from very low chakra reserves, the redhead was for all intent dead as a slaughtering machine. This was not the Naruto he knew, not the Naruto who stood confidently before his enemies without any thought of defeat. This was nothing more than a defeated shinobi. Have we been able to find the Jinchuriki? Minato asked the Nara clan head. Shikaku looked down at Naruto for a moment. They had all lost something valuable. Tsunade had managed to save some people, and some were not killed by the explosion. Their shinobi force was still fine as they hadn't been in the village when it was destroyed. Nevertheless, many civilian people were killed in the blast, including his own family. With Naruto lying like that, it was because his own family was gone. He now had nothing. Everyone has lost something, but Naruto appeared to be the only one who has lost the will to fight. It had to be hard for Minato as well, but he didn't have the time to console his only remaining family, his son. He had to do everything in his power to ensure that the village does not collapse in its current state. It was truly troublesome to be Hokage. The man was in pain, and yet, he had to put on a mask for the sake of Konoha. A man could but be selfish even for once. We can't find it was Jinchuriki, but we have found Kumo's Jinchuriki. She wasn't in any mood to fight. She handed herself to us." The Nara paused for a moment. "I wasn't aware she was in the village. Naruto saved her from the Akatsuki and brought her back to the village," Minato said calmly. "How long until Kiri and Kumo arrive?" "A couple of minutes or less. Our forces are surrounding the village now, but I'm sure the enemy already knows what has happened to our village," Kakashi said in an emotionalist tone. "Kiri will be here first, but as it stands, the Tsukikage and the Raikage will arrive first. We must still fight." He turned towards Naruto. "Is he in any position to fight?" "At the moment, no," Minato said with a shake of his head. "Aside from the lack of desire, he is rather low on chakra." "At least we still have the QB," said Bajoa. Wasn't too far off, but just a distance away, just watching. Itachi kneeled beside Naruto, and then threw Nagato's corpse next to the redhead. Upon seeing those eyes that took away everything from him, Naruto groaned painfully as he got up. There was something like hope inside his eyes. It clicked into his mind that the Rinnegan possessed something great, so much power. Without saying a word to the Uchiha, his fingers glowed with chakra before placing them atop of Nagato's head. Seal marks spread across the dead man's forehead, with Naruto closing his eyes. He kept them closed for about 2 minutes, before he suddenly flashed them open with intensity. The redhead faced the slug princess. "Tsunade, implant these eyes on me," he said, pointing at the Rinnegan. Everyone just stared at him before the question came. "Why? I honestly have nothing to live for. There is no point in fame if you have no one who loves you to praise you for it. But I know of a way to revive your loved ones with these eyes," Naruto said. "Do it now, Tsunade," the redhead said in a tone of finality. If it wasn't because of the situation, Tsunade would have snapped at him or even punched him, but aside from that, she wasn't going to kick a dog when it was already down. "You can do it, Tsunade," Minato said calmly. If his son was so serious about doing this, then he wasn't going to get in the way. Besides that, he still wanted to give hope to the men outside that there was still something to fight for. "Are you sure about this?" Shikaku asked. He didn't have too much hope on that one. Naruto wanted Ro revive the dead. Ridiculous. There was no jutsu that could do that. Minato nodded. The will to fight, and the desire to protect something precious is fundamental for all shinobi. As we are, what can we say we are fighting to protect? Our village has been destroyed, our families killed. Do you really think that all those outside will fight with everything they have with the knowledge that their loved ones are gone? There was a deafening silence the moment Minato said those words. They all knew that the Hokage was telling the truth. He wasn't just saying it to support his son to gain more power. This was a chance of hope. No matter how impossible they thought it was still a chance. A leap of faith was needed. Perhaps they didn't want to hope, and then for all their hopes to turn into dust. It would be a massive disappointment, but compared to being hopeless, it was much better. There was a chance, and they could seize it. The hidden leaf isn't the buildings, but its people. We can rebuild the village at any time, but if we have lost people, we cannot just make them again. If we get our loved ones back, we can fight with renewed strength and belief," Minato said again. He then turned to Tsunade without waiting for a response from the others. "Please assist us, Tsunade." "Fine." Tsunade grunted before taking a few steps. She stood between Naruto and Nagato's corpse. This wasn't ideal, but she still had to do it. With her skills, it wouldn't take more than a couple of minutes, and then she would apply the healing touches to make sure that Naruto is able to gain usage of the eyes once she is done with him. Yet, she could not reveal her worry for Naruto's life. They have not been friends, and she didn't forget the way he dragged her back into this village. Even so, Tsunade worried. If he was really successful, he would end up dying. There was always a price for such great power. She could not say it aloud though. She had to keep her thoughts to herself because no one seemed to realize that the Uzumaki wanted to sacrifice himself for Konoha. "I feel like I have become your nurse," Tsunade said as she kneeled. There is always something that needs to be done to your body. I'm always doing something, Naruto said. You sound pathetic. Those who call you a demon would surely be laughing if they saw you like this. Tsunade said in a hardened tone. Are you that low on chakra? Or perhaps has being defeated taken away your will to fight? When Naruto said nothing, Tsunade scoffed, but didn't attempt to continue with the conversation. She turned to Itachi and had him assist her as she removed the Rinnegan from Nagato. Minato looked away from the operation and turned to Kakashi. How was he going to tell the Jonin that his friend had been behind the Akatsuki and was the one who released the Kyuubi into the village years ago? Kakashi had been broken when Rin died, knowing that Obito had been alive and has been parading around as Uchiha Madara would surely shatter him. Is something wrong, sensei? Kakashi asked. He cursed himself for asking this stupid question. Minato lost his family in the explosion, of course, everything was wrong. Worse of all, he was forced to put on a mask so that he doesn't show any emotion. He could not grieve now because it would shatter the morale of their comrades, and they would lose the war. Minato smiled a sad smile. I'm hoping something will be right, the Yondaime Hokage said in a clearly sad tone that just mirrored his smile. All done, Tsunade said as she got up. Although I have closed everything that was open, I don't recommend you open them now. Your body needs to adjust and it might hurt if you just open them, the Slug Princess said before turning to the eyes that were staring down at the redhead Uzumaki. Once again, you have my thanks, Naruto said, eyes closed, a sad mask covering his face. He was on his knees as he faced the heavens. It was for a couple of seconds before he went through his memories once more. He then clasped his hands. This was his last stand. Gedo Rin Tensei. Naruto summoned Kill of Hell with all his might. Within seconds, it appeared before releasing the souls of those who had been killed by Nagato. The others were so amazed with what they were seeing that they stopped looking at the Uzumaki clan head, who was bleeding from his nose. When it stopped, they all turned to Naruto. His hair was pure white, skin slightly pale. The redhead mustered his will to get up. He took several steps from the group, hand trying to reach somewhere, but he could. It was sad. He wanted to see his sister one last time. He wanted to tell her to be proud of her brother. He wanted to put her on his shoulders and listen to her rants about the villagers' lack of respect for her beloved brother. He couldn't even tell Izumi he loved her. He smiled as he began to fall forward. Tsunade was the quickest to stop the Uzumaki from falling on his face. She laid him down and then tried to apply her healing touches, but nothing was working. She was just keeping him alive barely, but the moment she stopped, he was going to die. She frowned. It was sad. He really did it, but her fears were confirmed. This was at the cost of his life. If someone had said the redhead would go out this way, she would have rolled over the ground in laughter at the joke. What's wrong, Tsunade? Minato asked in a slightly panicked tone. He was kneeling beside his son, a worried look on his face. What do you think? I'm a medic. Even without knowing what kind of a jutsu he was going to use, I knew the chances of survival were low. The only jutsu I know of that can revive the dead is a kinjutsu that sacrifices your own life force. Look at his hair, he was already low on chakra, he exerted too much power, and he is going to die, the Slug Princess said in a bitter tone. Isn't there some way you can save him? Don't you think if I knew a way I would be doing it now? Tsunade shouted at the Yondaime Hokage. She then conned. Sorry, she said. Minato didn't pay it mind. He grabbed Naruto's right hand, tears threatening to break out, but held strongly. Why, Naruto? I wanted T to go out in S style. Naruto responded in a weak tone, eyes still closed. Maybe that was right. Naruto didn't feel too bad about it. He could only smile at the thought of the villagers praising his name for the sacrifice he made for them. A pity he would not enjoy the feeling, but oh well. You didn't get all your wishes granted, did you? Before Minato could say anything, a shinobi dropped by them. Yondaime-sama. Kumo and Iwa are coming close. The Reikage and the Tsukikage will be upon the village in a couple of minutes. Minato cursed. He felt like punching something, or just exploding in anger. This wasn't good at all. Naruto had managed to revive the dead, their loved ones, but he couldn't even watch his son die because an Onoki had a bad timing. He was a little pissed off at the moment. Couldn't he even say goodbye to his beloved son? Yondaime. The Kyuubi's voice cut off all thoughts. I can save him, you only have to seal me inside of him. But I don't have to be bound, I just need a way to be inside of him where my influence can reach every part of his body. Minato didn't ask anything. Okay, he said, placing his hands on both Tsunade and Naruto. You can't be serious, Minato. What if it is trying to take over his body? I will deal with it then. Minato responded in a hardened tone. For now, my only concern is about saving the life of my son, who just sacrificed himself to save the dead. You don't need to understand it, or agree to it. If anything happens, I will be responsible. By now, Minato's tone was dead cold. Shikaku, take Itachi and Kakashi and take command to engage our enemy. Don't forget to share the good news, I will join you shortly. He disappeared after saying those words. With Naruto found himself standing in an empty world, but there was a familiar presence he could feel. If this is hell, it is much nicer than I thought. The Uzumaki said. He wasn't expecting anyone to respond, but he did get a response from the familiar voice of the Kyuubi. How did you expect it to be? I expected to find myself swimming in my own blood, being tormented by the people I have killed so far. And of course, you would be there, Naruto said before adding with a smile. What kind of a hell would it be without the greatest demon? Kurama laughed before responding. Has that sacrifice you turned you into a cynical person? Or is it because you think you have lost everything? I have always been like this. Naruto responded calmly. Why do you think I often drink too much? It is because I sometimes feel like I am losing my sanity with the people who I have killed shouting murderous things at me. It is one of the things that has made me indifferent to other people. I realize that if I open myself to normal emotions, I will not be able to control myself. The emotions would be too much for me to handle. That is interesting, Kurama said. I have to say, I didn't think you of all people would sacrifice yourself for other people. I only did for my clan, Naruto said with a shrug of his shoulders. I just thought, why not revive the others? I was going to die anyway. Better leave something those humans would remember me with. Not the way I wanted to go, but I could not live without my family. Well, you did value your family above everything else, Kurama said. You're not dead yet. But depending on your answer, you might or might not die. Naruto narrowed his eyes. What is the question? It isn't a question, Kurama said. That jutsu has left you holding on by thread and you can die at any moment. However, I know you want to continue living, and I want to have my freedom. I'm also doing this because you surprised me. I never actually thought that even if it were for your family, you'd sacrifice your life. If you die, I will be forced back into the underground, or might even be sealed. I can't have that, so in exchange for survival, you will release me from our contract and let me go. Furthermore, you will make sure that no human tries to capture me for the rest of your life. It is that simple. You have a deal, Naruto said. He didn't care what the Bujou would do if it was allowed to roam free in the world. Naruto didn't have any thoughts of going back on his deal. As long as the Kyuubi could make sure that he was still alive to see his beloved sister again, Naruto would not mind allowing it to roam free. Kurama grinned. Excellent. We will always have a mental link, regardless, but you will be talking to the other half of me. This consciousness will cease to exist. He had known that Naruto would jump to the opportunity without asking too much about the terms, or what he was actually going to do to keep him alive. Any suspicious person would be curious, but the redhead was most concerned about living than any loopholes in agreement they were going to form. What are you actually going to do? I'm going to keep you alive with my lifespan. Your life ended when you used that jutsu. From today, henceforth, You will never be the same again. That was all the Bajou said before it disappeared and Naruto was flushed out of the eternal world. It didn't explain what it meant by that. Naruto felt a massive amount of pain tearing through his body. Every inch of his body burnt. It felt like his blood was boiling. On the outside, crimson chakra exploded around him, causing Tsunade, who had been standing close to him, trying to keep him alive, jump back to avoid the chakra. It lasted for a couple of seconds before it suddenly disappeared into thin air. Naruto's eyes snapped open. The dark purple eyes were now slightly reddish and pulsating with incredible power. "You're awake," Tsunade said as she stepped closer. She looked down at Naruto. She smiled. She was happy that he was alive. Truly happy. "And your hair has its life back. What did the Kyuubi do to you?" Naruto got up. He had been lying on the ground. He examined his body for a moment, and noted that his hair was a lot longer. It reached down his waist. He didn't mind that there were people looking at his bare chest. He didn't even spare them a glance. He cracked his neck, and closed his eyes for a moment as he held out his left hand. "Evil intent." That was all he said before he just vanished into thin air. Tsunade blinked. What the hell happened to him? She shook her head, smiling. He would always jump into the battlefield without a second of thought. Tsunade stood up. She should join in as well. Earlier with Minato. "I have to admit, I was a bit afraid about coming here," Onoki said with a grin. "But to my surprise, Konoha is in ruins. Do you still think you can fight, Yondaime?" Onoki asked mockingly. Onoki hadn't thought that something like this would happen. Nevertheless, this was a massive thing for them. He would have to thank the Akatsuki for their miraculous work. Who could have thought that the mighty leaf could be brought to its knees by just one person like this? They had been practically handed the victory on a silver platter. Even more to their favor was that Minato didn't seem to have any of the Jinchuriki he has captured with him. They may have escaped when the village was destroyed, or maybe something happened to them. At this moment, Onoki wasn't the least concerned about it. He was just happy that Minato didn't have them. "Even with both Suna and Kiri backing you up, you won't be able to win this fight," the Raikage said. "I imagine they will be reaching us soon, but I don't want any more bloodshed. I have much respect for you, Minato. I would rather you just surrender. We have already lost a lot of people. We don't have to lose any more when the outcome is obvious." Minato looked up into the heavens. Was this world fair? These people were wrong. They were the enemy, and they had dragged Konoha into a needless war. Yet, they were standing here in front of him assured of victory because Konoha had been destroyed and it had lost all 3 Jinchuriki it had gathered from the enemy. Surely, the morale was low in Konoha since they know that their home was destroyed. But a village wasn't the building, a village was its people. Konoha still had its people, the civilians were still there and they had been revived. They could rebuild after this war. Just because their home was destroyed didn't mean that they couldn't rebuild. They could rebuild. They had something to fight for. Their families were still alive, and that was much more valuable than a house. And they had Naruto to thank for that. For these thoughts, Minato felt he could not give up. He could not allow them to win. If he allowed these people to win, it was the end of everything that was right. He didn't care about his life at this time. He just wanted to fight for Konoha, for his dream, for what was right. The Leaf had yet to lose, it could still win. He wasn't sure if his allies would have the same thought. With Raza, the Leaf has recently lost its value in its present state. The Leaf was of no good to Suna, as it could not do anything. Minato would not be surprised if the man decides to return to his village without fighting. It would be betrayal, but that wasn't something that would be a shock in this dreadful world. Minato hardened his gaze as he stared at both cages and their men. Konoha's forces were behind him, but Mai's forces would be joining them from the right. If you cared about human life, you wouldn't have started this war. I find that talk about not wanting any more men to die to be just hypocrisy. He then turned to the Tsukikage. "I will not allow you to do as you please and get away with it, Onoki. I have lost my respect for both of you. and I will fight you, even if these men behind me decide to drop their weapons. I will fight for what I believe in until I breathe my last breath. Even though I say that, I really have no intention to die. Not when I'm not sure my son will pull through. Naruto had done something that made him proud to be a father, something that has made him come with a strong will to fight. Konoha will not surrender. I thought you were smarter than this. Uzumaki said. He held out his right, signaling for the men behind him to attack. ATT-. Boom. The Tsukikage was cut off when something landed just in front of Minato. There was debris and small gusts of winds that made it difficult to see what it was that had crashed in front of the Yondaime Hokage. When everything cleared, a very alive Uzumaki Naruto was standing in a small crater with the Rinnegan barely visible, as his eyelids were partly closed. Minato felt relieved not that Naruto was joining them but that he was alive. For a moment, he had thought he had lost his son. Naruto. Minato called. He was no longer a cage at that moment, but a father to a son. He just wanted to rush over to Naruto and give him a hug. He noticed the hair was rather long and his chakra signature was very different. If anything, it felt like the Kyuubi was standing in front of him, but without the chilling malice. The feeling made the Yondaime call again, this time in a questioning tone. Naruto. Stay back, don't interfere. Naruto said, without looking at his father. Before Minato could say anything, the redhead vanished. Naruto suddenly appeared at the heart of enemy forces. He held out both his hands. Shinra Tensei. Boom. A powerful explosion was followed by many cries tore through the enemy lines. The blast had torn through the ground, lifting up chunks of earth, with all the men surrounding Naruto blasted away into the air as they shouted and screamed. The blast created a large crater where Naruto stood, clearing way for a clear ground. Within a second of the explosion clearing, a charged-up Yondaime Raikage flashed in front of Naruto. His powerful punch hit the redhead straight on the chest with so much force that the Uzumaki spat out a mouthful of blood as he rocketed off. Whilst Naruto was flying, a suddenly appeared above him and slammed both his hands onto the redhead, sending him plummeting into the ground in a loud boom that caused debris to fly into the air. A landed a couple of feet away as Uzumaki flashed above preparing his jutsu. Jinten, Genkai Hakuri Hashira. The Tsukikage's jutsu flashed towards the debris in lightning speed before another powerful explosion tore through the ground, lifting up more debris. Both and the Tsukikage waited with watchful gazes as the debris cleared up. When it did, a bleeding Naruto got up from the crater he had been buried in. He spat out the blood in his mouth before wiping away the blood on his lips. The Uzumaki looked up at the Tsukikage. Was that your most powerful jutsu? Uzumaki stared. How are you alive? No one should live after being hit by that jutsu. It was just impossible. Not even Madara could survive that jutsu. No one. The only way to live was not allowing it to hit you, because once it does touch you, you were dead. It hit you? How can you still be alive? Certainly, it would have been disastrous if the jutsu hit me, but are you sure it really hit me? Naruto asked, still staring up at the Tsukikage. What? Uzumaki was confused by the question. Was Naruto saying that he had somehow dodged that jutsu? Impossible. The redhead hadn't moved from his location, and the blast had occurred right on the crater he was within. Don't take your eyes off your opponent. A suddenly said, just above the ground. The Raikage drove a punch straight towards Naruto's face. Even though he hadn't been looking at the Raikage, Naruto twisted clockwise, avoiding the lightning punch. Lightning currents still hit the side of his face. The redhead stopped, facing the other way with the Raikage on his right. In a split second, he drove his right hand, which burst with flames, right towards the back of the Raikage. Saw it coming and disappeared in a flash. He appeared on the left side of the redhead, his right foot traveling through the air in blinding speed. Naruto raised his left hand to block the kick, but it had too much on it that he ended up being sent to another direction. The redhead was able to recover quickly by flipping twice in mid-air before landing on both his feet. Once he landed, 10 shinobi jumped behind him. Naruto dropped to the ground like a four-legged animal and chains burst forth from behind. The chains pierced through 5 of the shinobi whilst the others managed to avoid them. Simultaneously, Naruto's facials took a feral look as chakra began to gather above him, creating a small black ball. He swallowed it before releasing it in a pale blast that traveled in the blink of an eye, heading straight towards the Raikage. The Raikage managed to avoid it, but the shinobi behind him were not so fortunate as the blast caught them before exploding. The explosion was so powerful that it tore through the ground, creating powerful gusts of winds and a large mushroom cloud of debris. The surrounding shinobi fearfully took steps away as the debris cleared. There was nothing remaining of those who had been caught by the blast. It was just dust. Naruto's appearance returned to normal before he straightened up. Once again it appeared above Naruto, his right foot crashing down towards the redhead in a flying kick. The Uzumaki jumped back to avoid the kick. As soon as A's foot crashed into the ground, Naruto flashed in front of the Raikage. He twisted around and sent his right foot straight towards the Raikage's face, but erased both his hands and blocked the kick. When Naruto's foot slammed into the Raikage's defense, the man slid backwards slightly before coming to a halt. The Raikage lunged towards Naruto, once again aiming a powerful punch towards the redhead's face, but Naruto raised both his hands to block the punch. He too was sent sliding backwards by the power of the punch. However, when Naruto stopped, 3 shinobi suddenly flashed around him. Their blades pierced through his upper body, one from his back, another on his gut, and another through his chest. Lightning burst through the blades, shocking the redhead. The electricity was powerful as its chirping sounded through the battlefield and caused smoke to come out of Naruto's body. Naruto's right hand suddenly grabbed the head of the shinobi in front of him by his face. Simultaneously, his left grabbed the other who had pierced through his gut with his blade, and a chakra chain burst forth and caught the man behind him. He lifted up both men into the air before forcing chakra into his fingers. He crushed the skulls of the men he had lifted up, even with the smoke still coming off his body because he had been severely burnt by the electricity. Before he could turn to the man behind him, the Raikage flashed in front of him, but the man could do nothing as Naruto's eyes opened fully and the Rinnegan caught the man at midair before he was grabbed by Naruto's right hand. With Minato. What the hell is this battle? May asked Minato. She had appeared moments ago, but Konoha's forces were being sent back to the Leaf to guard it against someone who might try to take advantage of the situation. There was only about 1,000 of Leaf shinobi around, but they were not fighting, they were watching what appeared to be Minato's son fighting. Is that really Naruto? Minato nodded. What happened to him? Itachi. Minato said to the Uchiha. If you were not looking but just going by your senses, would you say it is Naruto fighting? Itachi didn't offer an immediate response. He first looked with his Sharingan as the redhead danced around the battlefield. This was definitely not the same Naruto he knew, and it wasn't just because of the dojutsu he was wielding. There was something different about him, and his power level had certainly skyrocketed. It was not the same person he could go toe-on-toe with. At first I wouldn't say it is Naruto, but the Kyuubi. There is no doubt about that, but at certain times you do sense his chakra. Itachi responded. It wouldn't be incorrect to say it is both Naruto and the Kyuubi fighting. What is that supposed to mean? May asked. She was not following what those two were going at. Before I answer your question, I must first confirm something. Minato said to Mei before turning around. He saw a Hyuga and called him. How many chakra sources do you see in Naruto? Just one, sir, but it's different. It isn't unlike how a human is structured, and there doesn't seem to be an end to it. Minato frowned. As you can see the state of our village, it was destroyed, and almost everyone was killed in the blast. Naruto used a jutsu to revive everyone killed, but it was at the cost of his life. I was certain he was going to die, but the Kyuubi said there was a way to save him. I had to seal it in him, but I had to make the seal loose. By that it could take over Naruto's body, if it wanted once I have sealed it within. I was desperate to save Naruto's life. I didn't ask too many questions. If Naruto was a Jinchuriki, he should be having 2 chakra sources. Being a Jinchuriki would not have saved him. I spoke to Tsunade. There was nothing even she could do to save him because it wasn't a wound that was killing him, but the jutsu he used exerted too much energy from him. It ended up draining his life force away. I can't really explain anything or what has happened to him or why he is like that. I guess we can only get the answers from him, Minato explained. However, if there was only one source of chakra, it meant that the half of the kyuubi he had sealed inside Naruto was no longer. It had somehow managed to give Naruto its life force as well all of its power. What did this mean to Naruto though? Why are you not helping him? Minato shook his head. He said not to interfere, besides he looks like he has everything under control. Minato said that even after seeing that his son had been stabbed fatally. If things change, we will enter. The morale is already low because of the damage he has already done. Back in the fight, Naruto stared at the Raikage, but didn't say anything. The smoke coming off his body finally dispersed, revealing severe burns, yet the redhead didn't appear to be bothered by it. How is that you're still okay after being stabbed like that? Naruto wanted to respond, but he looked up as he saw a giant humanoid creature made from the earth crashing down towards him with both its feet rearing towards him. Naruto threw the Raikage away before jumping away from the path of the large formation. As he was jumping, Naruto formed a small black sphere of energy before lunging towards the formation. Mini Bijudama. He crashed the jutsu on the palm of his hand straight into the head of the creature. The jutsu exploded as soon as it connected with the formation and tore through it, making it crumble within a couple of seconds. The moment he landed down, the ground burst as a shinobi came out of the ground. A chakra rod suddenly formed from Naruto's right hand, and he stabbed it through the shinobi's right shoulder, causing the man to cry in pain. But as he was doing that, chains suddenly lifted from the ground, both his hands to Naruto's body, restricting his mobility. The chains were covered with explosive tags. Boom! A more forceful blast blasted the explosion of flames away from Naruto along with the chains, freeing him. But the Raikage flashed in front of him a second later, and once more again, his brutal punch crashed into Naruto's chest, sending the redhead flying backwards. A metal wall burst from the ground on Naruto's path, causing the redhead to crash into it in brutal fashion. Before the redhead could even slide down the ground, the Raikage was once again upon him in a flash. This time Naruto didn't allow the man to hit him. Shinra Tensei. The wordless jutsu caused an explosion that picked up the wall behind him and sent it flying away, along with the Raikage who was in front of him. Naruto stood still as he spat out more blood before looking at his healing body. When Onoki appeared above him, the redhead raised his right hand. Bansha Tenon. The moment those words left his mouth, the Sakikage was forcefully pulled towards the palm of his hand. Naruto grabbed the small figure of the old man by his neck and proceeded to strangle him, causing the old man to hopelessly kick in midair as he struggled to break free from the iron grip. Naruto wasn't just strangling the Sakikage, he was also absorbing his chakra. When he noticed that the Raikage had regained his bearings, Naruto formed a black rod on his left hand and stabbed it through Onoki's left shoulder before slamming the old man into the ground. He attempted to pin the old man with another rod, but the Raikage flashed below the redhead who was in midair in his attempt to stab Onoki. Landed a knee to Naruto's gut, but the rod that had been aimed at Onoki's right shoulder ended up piercing through his shoulder instead. Naruto flashed away from the two cages and landed a distance away. He watched for a moment as it removed the rod from his shoulder, ignoring the pain. The man glared at him for a second before once again darting towards him in great speed. A kick flashed just in front of his face. Naruto had dodged it by jumping back slightly. The moment he landed down, an explosive tag embedded between his legs before setting off an explosion. When the explosion cleared, Naruto was standing still, unharmed. When it flashed in front of him, Naruto raised his right hand and pulled the man into the palm of his hand. For the second time, the Raikage was lifted up into the air by his hand. Gakudo. Naruto muttered as he started to absorb the lightning surrounding the Raikage. When he noticed that Naruto was absorbing his chakra, he tried to kick the redhead with his right foot, but Naruto didn't just block the kick, he caught A's foot. The man still forced his way closer to Naruto before landing a brutal headbutt straight on the redhead's forehead. Naruto allowed the man to go. A flashed a distance away and landed on his knees panting, His lightning chakra cloak was no longer at full strength. This wasn't the first time that Naruto was absorbing his chakra, and he was really giving it his all in his attacks. Yet, despite every hit and the damage, the redhead didn't appear as if he was going to stop. It appears that you cannot afford to continue any longer, Naruto said. Well, for a human that is to be expected. Without warning he disappeared in the blink of an eye and appeared in front of the wreckage, and second later, the man was in mid-air clutching his gut after Naruto had kicked him. The redhead didn't allow the man to go any further, he grabbed him by the foot and slammed him into the ground in a loud boom. Jinten, Genkai Hakuri Hashira. Naruto held out his left hand and absorbed the jutsu as it neared him. Unoki widened his eyes when he witnessed this. It was for the first time he was seeing the redhead use that technique. Well, this could explain why he was still alive and how he had absorbed his chakra earlier. You two can no longer give me a challenge, as such you should stay down, Naruto said as he turned to face the enemy forces. He took a single step forward, but before he could take another, grabbed his left leg just below the knee. His lightning cloak no longer encased the man. Don't think it is over like that, the man said as he got up. The sword of Uzumaki was upon Naruto's right hand in the blink of an eye, and in another blink, the sword had cut through A's left shoulder, separating his arm from the rest of his body. A showed a great tolerance of pain by not even making a sound when blood started to gush out of his shoulder. But he cursed as he once again fell on his knees. He could not muster any more chakra to activate his lightning cloak. The redhead was playing unfair by taking away his chakra. Truly, he hadn't thought that this would happen. Minutes ago, victory had been assured, and now he was in this pitiable state, because of just one person. Where was B anyway? The brother of his should have been with them by now. Did he encounter a challenging task with Fugaku? The Raikage refused to think of the worst concerning his brother. He could not now when things were like this. If you make another move, I will cut you in half, Naruto said as he looked at the Tsukikage. Do you wish to suffer the same fate, Tsukikage? He asked as he took several steps towards the enemy forces, the sword of Uzumaki sliding through the ground as he walked. Unoki glared murderously towards Naruto. This was a lost war, but he could not bring himself to surrender. This wasn't supposed to happen. How were they even supposed to fight this battle? Not to mention, there were still more enemies to fight. He had started the war because of Konoha's power, but this wasn't what the village had. This was something more frightening. What has he done? This has awakened because of his actions. Dealing with Minato already gave him bad thoughts, but now they also had to fear that thing. Bansha Tenon. Not again, Unoki cursed as he was once again pulled towards the palm of Naruto's hands. He was pulled with a lot more power and speed this time around. Once Naruto grabbed him by the throat. You don't have a choice. You're the reason we are here in the first place. The moment those words left Naruto's mouth, Unoki widened his eyes as the sword of Uzumaki pierced through his chest. Tsukikage-sama. There was a shout from onrushing shinobi, who were speeding towards their cage. Naruto looked up for a moment before throwing the cage towards his men. He also lunged towards them. When the group neared him, Naruto held out his left hand. A small orb of lightning formed on the palm of his left hand, burst exploding into multiple bolts of powerful energy that caught the shinobi. Their ear-shattering screams didn't affect Naruto, as he formed a small black orb on the palm of his left hand. Without a warning, Naruto vanished and appeared above Unoki facing downwards. Naruto slammed the jutsu onto Onoki's gut. The moment it connected, it exploded into a powerful explosion that created gusts of winds and lifted debris. The two were entirely covered by the debris. A wave of powerful chakra blasted the debris away. It revealed Naruto standing in the middle of crater. The redhead had 6 tails slowly swinging behind him. Head facing up, his hands were like claws. An eerie silence filled the area for a couple of seconds. Naruto released a low growl before his head snapped towards the enemy. The 6 tails suddenly slammed down behind him, crushing the ground. He then lunged towards the enemy, looking a lot more excited to slaughter them all. Itachi suddenly flashed in front of the redhead, slightly above the ground. The Uchiha was now certain that Naruto had lost control of himself. Whatever the Kyuubi had done, Naruto wasn't able to control his power. Or perhaps he had finally lost it. Either way, he had be stopped, or he would not stop until everyone in the battlefield was dead. Naruto tried to hit the brakes when Itachi flashed in front of him, but he was going too fast to stop. He was only stopped by Itachi's foot. The Uchiha landed a powerful kick straight on his forehead. Even though it connected head-on, it only succeeded in halting his movements. Naruto released another low grow before dropping down on his hands. The claws touched down the ground gracefully, and he stood like a six-tailed animal. Naruto lunged towards Itachi in a sudden movement that left debris behind him. Itachi saw the redhead's movements with his Sharingan, and quickly activated his Susanoo. A complete version of it formed within seconds as Naruto neared him. By the time the redhead was upon him, his Susanoo was formed around him. Naruto's tail slammed into the Susanoo in a forceful movement that caused Itachi to slide back slightly, but the Susanoo held firm without breaking. With his attack blocked, Naruto didn't try to attack again so soon. He allowed gravity to slowly pull him down. Before he could land, Itachi attacked. The Susanoo's right hand punched the redhead head-on. The punch was brutal. It slammed onto the redhead, sending him flying backwards. As he was flying backwards, Naruto's tail slammed onto the ground, forcing his body to hit the ground. He hit the ground with both his feet slightly bent down. The momentum forced by the punch from the Susanoo forced him to slide back slightly. When he stopped, Naruto dropped into all fours, tails faced up as they gathered chakra above his head. The chakra formed a small black orb of energy that was as big as a normal Rasengan. Naruto didn't swallow it once he was done. He blasted it towards Itachi. Itachi brought out the sword of Totsuka and the shield as he sensed what Naruto was trying to do. When the redhead blasted his jutsu towards him, Itachi readied his shield. He didn't try to dodge as the jutsu flew towards him in speed. He positioned his shield, and then attempted to cut the jutsu with the sword of Totsuka. When the sword collided with the Bajor bomb, the jutsu exploded. Boom! A small shockwave tore through the ground as the jutsu set off. This was followed by black flames that created a large column around Itachi. The Uchiha's entire form was surrounded by the flames. It took about a minute for the flames to disperse, but when they did, Itachi was on his knees inside a sizable crater. Naruto almost grinned seeing the Uchiha down. He darted towards the Uchiha like an animal, running with both his hand and legs. As he neared Itachi, he jumped up slightly. Itachi didn't smile, but this was what he expected the redhead to do. He knew he had to leave himself open for the redhead to attack recklessly. Naruto would not attack like this. He had truly lost it. He looked up. Amaterasu. Jet black flames burst into life around Naruto's body. The redhead let out a loud growl as the flames burnt his body slowly. As he fell down, chakra chains suddenly burst through the ground. Naruto didn't even have the time to try to avoid them before the chains grabbed him by his tails and slammed him into the ground. They held him up as he tried to get up. Two more burst forth, wrapping around his body. He growled as he struggled to break from the chains. The flames of Amaterasu didn't help matters. Kushina slowly walked towards Naruto, but kept a safe distance. "I'm sorry, Naruto," she said in a sad tone before clasping her hands together. "It's fine, Itachi, I have this." The Uchiha nodded before canceling his flames. Naruto let out a more human cry as the chakra around his body started to return to his body. The tails disappeared as his features returned to normal. Kushina retracted her chains as Naruto fell on his knees, eyes closed. He suddenly fell down flat on his face. And then there was silence. Minato took the silence as a chance to turn to the enemy. "If you wish to continue, we can still continue, but this time, I will also join in, and the Mizukage forces as well," the Yondaime said in a calm tone. "Oh, and Suna's forces are here as well. But if you want to save your lives, return to your villages now. I'm being merciful, but it won't last long if you stay here for too long." Another silence settled in once more as Konoha's forces and the Mizukage's force took steps forward, ready to battle if their enemies wanted to fight. However, the enemies took the raikage and started to disappear one by one. Minato didn't waste the time before turning to Konoha's forces. He knew what had happened before. The QB had gone on a rampage after being released. Naruto obviously possessed the Bajoa's chakra and he had gone out of control. If the civilians heard of this, they would forget that he sacrificed himself for them and start looking at him in some ways, fearing that he would lose it again. They may even think that he is the QB itself. The Yondaime Hokage made a decision. Naruto fought and defeated the Tsukikage and the Raikage. The war ended, after which nothing happened afterwards. This did not happen, and should not be spoken of again. It shall be an S-rank secret. I'm sure you can appreciate the person who sacrificed his life to save your loved ones. For those who wish to test me, disobey my law. Chapter 29. Island of Uzu. Kochiyos no Jutsu. Naruto slammed his hands into the ground, summoning the remaining half of the nine-tailed beast. The monstrous Bajoa appeared in a large puff of smoke. Upon his appearance, Kurama breathed in the air. He could smell the sea from where he stood. The Bajoa looked to the side. He was indeed closer to the sea. He looked down at the small form of Uzumaki Naruto. Where are we? Island of Uzu. This is just away from the village. Naruto responded. At least for now, you can live here without anyone disturbing your peace. Few humans here take care of my farms and properties. I would appreciate it if you did not scare them. There will be a barrier around this location, and I will build a large wall to make sure nothing stray comes this way. That wasn't part of the agreement. Kurama said with narrowed eyes. I don't remember going into those finer details with you. I will release you from our contract, and you are free to do as you please in this limited space. Once things change in the elemental nations, I will move you. But for now, you will remain here. This is my way of protecting you. Naruto said. I lost control back then. Not a good moment that made him proud. It shouldn't have happened. Well, at least the shinobi population didn't seem to have been surprised about it. Even though his father passed a law, it was something that was still spoken about in the dark alleys. It was something that people went like, oh, he finally snapped. Kurama settled down, resting on his paws, and stared deep into the Rinnegan. I was certain something like that would happen. It has nothing to do with the Rinnegan, but with your own darkness. I'd say you just wanted to do what you normally do in a battlefield. But this time the lust was too great, because of the overwhelming emotions and hatred. Naruto adopted a thoughtful look on his face for a couple of moments before responding. I see. He said. Tell me more about what this means. My father has been pressing me over the details, but I have been busy at home trying to rebuild my compound and helping in the village to worry about the finer details. It has been work after work in the Hidden Leaf. He had hired experts in building, and then summoned hundreds of clones. He had the experts direct the clones on what to do, and the Uzumaki compound was quickly rebuilt, and once more again fortified. But this time it wasn't hidden away from the public eye. There were still sections that were hidden, but it was a lot more open. It had to do with the fact that they were continuing with the academy, and other clans had decided to dump war orphans in his backyard. Well, Naruto wasn't complaining. He had built the buildings for that purpose and Konoha was paying for everything. He could not complain. I told you that you were going to protect me for the rest of your life, and I meant that. You have my life force, so as long as I live, you will also live. At the moment, you're like a Bajoa. You're immortal. If you get killed, you will just reform again in a couple of years or months. Kurama said with a grin. The curse for that power is that you get to watch your loved ones die. Your sister, your children, your parents, they will all grow old and die whilst you remain as you are. But of course, if you get tired of living, you can always enter a long deep sleep. But if something happens, I will wake you up to keep your end of the bargain. Naruto wasn't smiling upon learning this. You knew this, but did not tell me. You wouldn't have been quick to jump to the offer. Kurama said indifferently. What do you humans say? Don't make a deal with the devil. Kurama laughed before growing serious. If you try anything, I can end the life I gave you in an instant. Perhaps, but you told me that the conscience of the half of you no longer exists. My guess is that it has become a part of me, isn't it? Kurama. Kurama glared. Don't call me by my name, human. I have all the juices of a human, but I am not really human, am I? Naruto said, smiling. When I want to end my existence, I will. Besides, with all this power, even I can temporarily end your existence. But let us not make threats. Despite how devious your ploy is, I must still thank you for giving me this chance to live. Naruto said, turning away from the Bajoa. Where are you going? Iwagakure, I have a message from Minato that I must deliver to the Tsukikage. Naruto said, with a wave of his right hand. Kurama watched as the redhead walked away before vanishing. Iwagakure. Naruto looked through the view of the Rinnegan as he arrived at the village hidden in rock. It was his first visit in the village since the war. He has visited other villages, running on diplomatic missions for the Hidden Leaf. If anyone had told him that after the war, he would be doing this, Naruto would have been massively amused at the joke. At that time, it would have taken a miracle for him to act in that role. It wasn't just his displeasure in the role, but his reputation didn't do him any favors. Most people had always been on the edge when talking to him, even though he wasn't making any threats. It only came with being Uzumaki Naruto and the bloody trail he left in his wake whenever he graced a battlefield. Well, that was outdated. He wasn't looking forward to shedding more blood needlessly, and his father has been on his case about it. The talks about looking good were annoying, and he could never get away from them. Since the war, his father has taken a firm stand in delivering the lectures he used to give him when he was younger. Naruto shook his head and looked at crowded streets of the Hidden Rock. There was no love lost from the shinobi, who were staring at him in hidden corners. Well, to be honest, Naruto really didn't care about it. He would even be willing to go as far as to give the Tsukikage the middle finger if there were some disagreements. Iwagakure had lost the war it had started. Konoha had to deal with the situation, and he would do it. Well, the fact that he was the son of the Yondaime Hokage and his own actions had been detrimental to Iwa's cause didn't do any favors. But it was to be expected. He simply could not allow them to do as they pleased. When enemies wanted to kill you, you could not just sit back and allow them to do as they please. You had to stop them for your own survival. Shaking his head, Naruto took the direction of the Tsukikage Tower. There was no one to lead him towards the tower, or even welcome him. He really wasn't loved in this village, was he? Kuretsuchi was perhaps thinking that one of the villagers would just hit him with a rock, and then he would drop dead. The woman would really laugh in joy if something like that happened. It was a pity that even though he could be killed, the death was temporary and he would come back and get his revenge on whoever felt they had a right to end his life. Kuretsuchi looked up from the mountain of paperwork on her desk. She glared at the Uzumaki for a long minute. She had known he was in the village. Konoha had sent a message saying that he was coming to see her. But she hadn't felt like giving him special treatment. This was the man who killed her grandfather. He did not deserve anything from her. What do you want, Uzumaki? Kuretsuchi demanded. As you can see, I have a lot of paperwork to do. If you can get to your business quickly, I will appreciate it. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this hostile treatment. He shook his head before sitting down. Is that how you treat someone who spared your life, Kuretsuchi? He had not killed her. He could have, but in the end, he chose to leave her alive because he knew that the Tsukikage was going to die. Even though she had been a twisted little thing that had to be removed to do Konoha a favor, he had felt that Iwagakure would collapse without someone strong enough to lead it. Maybe that wouldn't have been so bad as a consequence for starting a war, but Naruto felt that it was fine to let her live. She was still young, and if she lived differently, she could correct the mistakes of her grandfather. But Naruto doubted that something like that could happen. With the ways he was looking at him, it was apparent that she saw no wrong in what her grandfather did, but only saw the wrong in his actions. "I didn't beg you to keep me alive," she said distastefully. Naruto held out his right hand, the Rinnegan flicking lightly as a small-tailed beast bomb formed on the palm of his right hand. "If you're saying you're not thankful for the life I gave you, you can die now. I have no problem in killing you. And no one will even be able to do anything about it. If this village feels it needs to retaliate, I will be given an excuse to wipe it clean from the map of the elemental nations." Kuretsuchi was reminded of why she really hated the Uzumaki. He was deadly, dangerous, and seemed to do things when he saw fit. She didn't like that there was someone as powerful as him who could do anything and get away with it. It wasn't fair to the other nations. Where was the balance? The black-haired sighed deeply, but still kept her glare on Naruto as she leaned back to her chair. "If I die, this village will be lost. I can't die. Not until I get this village out of this mess." Their allies had deserted them. The feudal lord wasn't giving them a damn thing, and missions requests were going outside to smaller villages. The village was in dire situation, all because of the stupid war. She was willing to admit that it was stupid, but killing Iwa's enemies wasn't stupid. Perhaps her grandfather could have taken a different route to manage things, but they happened in the way they did, and she could not change that. "For this village's future, I must live." Naruto nodded, smiling. He cancelled his jutsu before speaking. "Good. Now, if you could change a few things, we can get by fine without any need to glare at me like that. I'm hoping that you won't be like your grandfather. But that isn't the reason I am here. I was sent by the Yondaime Hokage to discuss the terms of your surrendering and punishment for starting the war. Isn't it punishment enough that we lost many men and my grandfather? Our allies have also deserted us for our actions. Don't you think that is enough?" Naruto shook his head. "Kuretsuchi, up until now, you have not admitted that your village was in the wrong to start the war, and there was no reason to start it in the first place. We were innocent, but yet you chose to start war with us with sinister motives. We cannot simply let that slip through. We need to show an example and leave a mark that such actions cannot go unpunished. This will be Konoha's justice." Kuretsuchi frowned. She was still not planning to admit to the Uzumaki that Iwagakure had been on the wrong. But if their allies were willing to abandon them in their time of need, it had to mean that they had done something unforgivable. She had done an investigation into whether Konoha was responsible for the actions of Iwa's allies, but they were choosing to do something different because they had been disturbed by their actions. There was nowhere to hide, and she could not say that they were wrong, and she was right. The whole world could not be wrong and just one person right. There was something that had been wrong somewhere, and until things changed, Iwagakure would not be able to continue like this. The Raikage had refused to give a helping hand. She was struggling to come up with ways to manage things. If this village had gone through what the Hidden Leaf did, she would have given up on it long ago, because she would have been incapable of rebuilding it. What does the Yondaime Hokage want as his justice? First, we finish up the simple things. You will go to Konoha, offer your apologies for your village's actions in the war, and condolences to the shinobi who died in the war. You will build an orphanage to address issues in Konoha and fund it. You will gather your people and condemn your grandfather's decision as passionately as you can, whilst pointing out everything that was wrong with the decision to go to war. The little hard things: for the next 5 years, Iwa will stop military recruitment. That means a total freeze in expanding your village's military. To promote future good relationship between Iwa and Konoha, we will decide whether to get you married to either Itachi or me. Even though the marriage is political, you will be expected to give birth to a child, no later than 2 years into the marriage. Once that child is able, she will live in Konoha." Kuretsuchi thought of spitting at the redhead, but she just exploded. "You're crazy. Your father is crazy. I will not subject myself to that humiliation, nor will I prostitute myself to you," the woman said, slamming her fists into the desk. "If you do not agree to the terms, I've been given the order by Konoha's council to execute you and everyone who took part in the war. Kuretsuchi settled down and stared. She wasn't going to call Naruto's bluff. She was told that Uchiha Itachi had stopped him from slaughtering the survivors. He had no problem in killing people. But the terms were something that she could not swallow that easily. I need time to think about this. Naruto shrugged. A week, and then you send a letter to Konoha with a schedule on how you plan to proceed with the terms. Within a month from today, formal arrangements for the marriage should have started, and your appearance to Konoha should be confirmed by then. Kuretsuchi swallowed bitterly. It appears that your father has changed drastically. I never thought that he would use your power to hold us hostage into agreeing to your ridiculous demands. Naruto shrugged once more. I forgot to mention that we have sealed the chakra of your Jinchurikis. What of Kumo? More or less the same terms, Ujido is to be married to me. She will no longer be a Kumo kunoichi, but a Konoha shinobi. We have demanded that a select someone to succeed him, and he has agreed to it. Even though we did have to make some threats, things have progressed smoothly. Kuretsuchi was silent for a few moments before speaking. Let me get this straight. I will not become your whore. I've heard stories about you. The woman said in disgust. I'd rather prostitute myself to the Uchiha. At least I have heard he is a good person. Besides, Iwa can gain the Sharingan. Naruto was amused. Do you really think that Konoha would give up something like that? The redhead asked. I told you, once the child is able, it will live in Konoha with its father. It will grow and die as a leaf. It will be your choice whether you want to follow your child or not. Konoha. The following day, Naruto walked through the streets of the Hidden in Leaf, coming back from his week-long absence. Iwa wasn't the only village he had visited. His father was still continuing to pile more work over his shoulders than doing the work himself. Well, at least this time he could understand a bit. With everything going around the village, the man was having too much work to do. He was barely even present at home. Naruto could even count the number of days the man slept within the home he had rebuilt. Yes, the Uzumaki compound was the first home that was concluded. There were so many things that needed to be kept hidden within the grounds of the compound. Naruto had only needed an experienced builder to show him the way whilst his army of clones rebuilt the compound in a short space of time. He had even helped rebuild the new Hokage Tower, hospital and academy. Most of the village had been rebuilt. It had worked quickly with shinobi and allies pulling their weight to help the builders rebuild everything. Funds for the construction hadn't been an issue. With the large sums they received from Kumo and Iwa and the Fire Lord, they were able to get things done quickly. Uzumaki-sama. It was the kind of greeting the redhead received whenever he graced the streets of the Hidden Leaf. When you did something nice for people, they recognized your efforts. Uzumaki Naruto was a respected leader of Konohagakure. He had saved the lives of many by restoring the people who had been killed by pain, and whenever he was around, his clones were always helping with rebuilding the village. It was a nice change that Naruto welcomed. It might not be much fame that got people to worship him, but it was something else. He was still alive, and with many more years to follow him, and with all the power he possessed, there were still many great things he could do. It was so that Naruto felt no need to rush things. Before he went home, Naruto went to see his father in the Hokage Tower. Minato was buried behind a couple of mountains of paperwork. There was a lot. The man was even hardly home these days. When you wanted to see him, you had to come to the office. Some other days, he had the third helping him out. Some other days, most of the days he was alone. Naruto took out a scroll with the report of his travels, and placed it on the Yondime's desk. Everything is in here. We ought to have sorted things with those two for now at least. I will retreat to clan grounds to focus on the clan. Once the time limit runs out, I will move again. Minato looked up from his paperwork. Thanks. He said. I will schedule another cage meeting in 2 months to check on the progress report. I will also honor Kumo's request to classify the Hiraishin as Kinjutsu and stop using. You also have to do the same with your jutsu. Naruto shrugged. My jutsu is no longer a necessity to decimate enemies in my current form. I just have to weave a few hand signs, and everything will disappear. The Uzumaki stated calmly. But, are you sure about your jutsu? It is everything you have, and you protect your family with it. I can still use it, but there are some areas I have agreed not to use it. If we get past the next 2 months without any troubles and still manage to talk fairly with the new cages, we should be able to leave this fragile stability. Maybe then, we can focus on trying to change the system. On that, Naruto shook his head. That is your dream, father. I will be focusing on making the Uzumaki great again. I'm not saying I won't help you, but don't say we. The Uzumaki clan head said. I have my troubles with the other clan heads. I didn't think Itachi's entrance would change so many things. Since Itachi became clan head, it has been a completely new different ball game. It has always been Uzumaki against the world, but that was because he was hated for what he knew, but the destruction of the leaf and the war has given a chance for new changes, and different sets of players. Fugaku used to back him up when the others were against him, but things have changed. It wasn't because Itachi had become traitor, it was because the others actually got along with the Uchiha, even the damn Hyugas. Before, even though they hadn't been actively going against the Uchiha, they hadn't liked Fugaku, but now they liked Itachi and things were still the same with him. It was because even though there have been changes, he had only become even more powerful. The Uzumaki Secret Service still worked, but they had to go around things themselves. However, things had become difficult now with an oversight agency now created. Minato said this was for transparency and so that nothing in the village's structure was used for other means, but everything worked within its scope of duty. The oversight agency reported to the council, and to the council alone. It had oversight duties over the military police force, Uzumaki Secret Service, Intel Division, and the Jonin forces. Minato still controlled the Anbu, but he was helped by Itachi, who was made commander of the Anbu forces a couple of weeks ago. There had been some concerns raised over the Uchiha's growth in power as they controlled the military police and now would in charge of Anbu. But a witness had come in to vouch for Itachi's personality and character. Naruto could not forget how the Sandaime Hokage had spoken in glowing terms when he spoke of the Uchiha's love for the hidden leaf. Even his father had joined in the party as well. It can't be helped. Itachi's conduct has always been exemplary in character and no one can question his love for Konoha. You did save the villagers and technically ended the war, but your conduct towards the other clan heads has been dismissive of late. Naruto shrugged. It can't be helped when they say the wrong things. If you don't try to change your attitude, I will be forced to select Itachi as my successor. Naruto shrugged. I have never been interested in becoming Hokage. Besides, in my condition, do you think it is safe to have me in this office? The redhead paused and stared into the ceiling for a moment. Once we finish rebuilding, I must leave the village and stay in my farm until I can control myself. These seals cannot hold on forever. I need to learn how to control myself. I understand that. Minato said. Then did you talk to the QB about the developments in your body? Naruto frowned visibly. Kurama. He said. Minato tilted his head to the side. Kurama. That is apparently the QB's name. Each Bajoa has a name and they were given their names by the Sage of Six Paths. In any case, there is nothing wrong with me. However, I will have a choice when I wish to stop living in this world. Minato was silent for a couple of seconds as he pondered on what Naruto had said. Does that mean you can't die? I figured it was something like that when we confirmed that you only had one chakra source, not two. Your life had ended, and regardless of how immense the QB's chakra is, it could not have saved your life. The Yondaime Hokage paused. Does that mean? It means nothing, father. We never had this conversation, and we never will. I will figure a way to answer the questions when people start noticing that I'm not aging anymore. Naruto stated. I think I will age a bit more until I become like you, and once that has ended, I will stop. Uzumaki compound. Naruto-sama. A shout welcomed Naruto as soon as he entered the guarded gates of the Uzumaki compound. They now had guards protecting the compound just to make sure everyone who went in and out was counted for. Before the Leaf's destruction, they didn't allow outsiders to get in, only on a few occasions, and some people got into the compound grounds. Things called for a change since they were offering services to the villagers. It wasn't only the orphanage that they ran but also their own academy. Of course, it was still going through some processes, but it would soon be open for children to enroll and start learning things about what being shinobi means. The Uzumaki looked down at the child calling his name. He didn't know the name. There were not many running loose around the compound, but Naruto didn't feel it was necessary to know all their names. He was feeding them on the very grounds he had built. No one could lay claim to anything that was within the clan compounds. He had built everything with his hands and efforts. No one could dispute that. It felt somewhat joyous to know that even the buildings that would stand in the village had his hand on them. He would not enjoy the feeling for far too long though. The redhead smiled at the child and offered his kind greetings. It was something else for him, but he had to keep the mask for his reputation. Whilst he may not be well liked by the political powerhouses of the Hidden Leaf, he was still a darling to the villagers. Without wasting too much time in the streets, Naruto made his way to the main house. He went straight to his favored room, the room used for welcoming guests, also his working station. There was an office, but Naruto preferred the large space around here. He usually had a small table prepared, and then would sit on a cushion while doing his work. As usual, it was already prepared for him. Naruto let out a long breath as his mask slipped to an expressionless one before he settled down. The clan head stared into his papers for a moment before he started writing. Azumi walked into the room moments later. She didn't say anything until she settled in front of the Uzumaki. "We are going not getting fair treatment." "What do you mean by that?" Naruto asked without looking up to the woman. "You're all nice and smiles with the villagers, even though they are fake, but when you come back home it is all a flat look," Azumi stated calmly. "You're my family, you know me." Naruto responded with a glance over to Azumi. "In any case, how was your trip to Iwa?" "I had no one lying along the way waiting to murder me," Naruto responded calmly. But Kuretsuchi was still being difficult. "I don't understand people like her who cannot see reason or even trace a sense of logic even when it hits them right in front of their face. Perhaps it is the lack of emotional control that makes them irrational. In any case, I expect things to go well soon." It wasn't to say that she would suddenly start liking him, not the least. There was some reason to believe that she would continue to resent his very existence for the rest of his life. Well, for the rest of her life, considering that he was going to outlive her. He had been trapped in a devious trap by the Kyuubi, and an exit meant death. Azumi shook her head. "You don't have to put it like that, you know," she said, but didn't think he would take her word for it. Who did she decide to marry? Azumi was asking because she knew what the Yondaime and his council had decided on what was the solution to ensure that Uegakure never betrayed them again. It was perhaps something out of her taste, but it was going to be done for the sake of better relations in the future. "You know, the only reason she would decide to marry me is if she planned on killing me in my sleep," Naruto said in a matter-of-fact tone. There really was no doubt about that. She had said it herself. If it was going to happen, Naruto would not have worried about it, because unless the woman was working with gods, there was nothing she could do other than make him feel pain. "I know." Azumi nodded. "But, given the look she had on her face when you decided that she was best suited to become a slave of the Uzumaki, I would think she would be willing to go that far as long as it took her closer to you." Naruto shook his head, but the thought wasn't out of the question. It was possible for the woman to do so. When going there, he had considered the thought, and made sure that he would do anything to ensure that she was going to end up picking Itachi just to stay away from him. He would have considered just working her as a slave until he was satisfied, but his mother had said it was better to allow her to return to Iwa and act as its cage since Onoki was dead. Naruto wanted to keep her as his pet, but other people had come in with their ultimate thoughts upon learning about the survival. I have often depended on your abilities to lead the clan in case of my absence, but since both of us are going to be absent, I must at least push the responsibilities to someone else. Mother will handle some matters even though she dislikes the formality of it all. They were going away for a week-long stay in Uzoshogakure as a family. He had made a promise to his sister that he would take her to the island once the war was over. She has been bugging him for some time about it, but it was around time he delivered on the promise or else his sister would start being a problem. The clan was moving along just fine, and his fame within the Hidden Leaf made it easier for the clan to grow powerfully. The other clans could not simply dismiss their power. Alone, he was a one-man army, and not to mention that the Yondaime Hokage was also married to the clan. The only irritation to the growth was that he was rather infamous to the many who saw him as an enemy. Naruto really didn't concern himself with those worthless humans who had nothing better to do than hate. People could hate all they want, as long as they didn't try to take any action on him, he would not have any problem. If they tried something, he would not have any problems in eradicating them. But the problem with that was that he needed his father's peace to work out. It would not be a pleasant thing if he was the one sabotaging it. He didn't even want the Uzumaki to have that many enemies. If it had enemies, Uzu would not be allowed to rest, his trade routes would be attacked regularly and he would fail to deliver as a result thereof. Stability would not benefit just Hidden Leaf alone, it would also benefit him and the clan massively. Is it going to be fine leaving the village when other clan leaders are threatened by your existence? Azumi asked quietly. Naruto might be doing his duties as clan head at full capacity now since he no longer did missions, but she knew the politics. She might not be playing them, but they were around, and she had taken notice of it. Most clan heads really thought about their clans first, and when Naruto was coming out dwarfing their power and influence, they would be threatened. The Uzumaki clan head didn't help matters in any way because he didn't sympathize. He was hearing none of it, and treated the clan heads like commoners who were greedy. At least the relations with the Uchiha clan have not in any way been crippled. They were still people who spoke in the same room without any conflict crossing the borders of insults and threats. It will be good to give them a breathing space. The redhead said calmly. We still have to think about the wedding when we come back. Those words brought a smile on Izumi's lips. Yes. She nodded a bit enthusiastically. Are you still hell-bent on inviting only a few people? Naruto nodded. We don't need the whole world to see it. It would be better not to even do it here in this village. Far away in the island on Uzu where the land has not seen much blood, but has experienced peace in abundance. It will be significant that way. Are you choosing Uzu because of its sentimental value? Azumi asked. She didn't have a problem with going to Uzu for the marriage. It was no problem for her because she really didn't have any relationship with Konoha. For all her life, she has been in Uzumaki through and through. She didn't even have a friend outside the Uzumaki clan. She could even say it without doubt that some members of the clan were like that as well. Most of them were taught within the compound, and when they went out as Uzumaki. Naruto had gone to the village's academy because he was the son of the Hokage, and the same for Karin as well. They didn't need to go to the academy because they could have received the best education they needed here at home. Perhaps. Naruto adopted a thoughtful look on his face before shaking his head. If Minato wasn't the Yondaime Hokage, I'd move the clan back to its home. Gradually, as we expand, some of us will have to stay in Uzu. No matter, the project is not mine, but a legacy for the clan. I don't care about getting rich, that is why everything we will make from the business will be used to grow the clan and support those who can't. Azumi smiled. She wasn't surprised by those words. There were two things that Naruto loved dearly, himself and his clan. On the selfish side of things, she still couldn't believe that he had sacrificed himself for the sake of the village. Well, even though he tried to say that he did it for his family, He had included the village, and that was something that would always be treasured by the villagers and her. Azumi opened her mouth to say something, but she didn't get to speak her words as Karin burst through the room. Oni-sama. The young girl more or less shouted with a glare. You have been ignoring me lately in favor of smiling at the other kids, she accused as she strolled towards the two adults. Shin and the other Karin followed behind shortly. Naruto merely shook his head at his sister's antics. But it was true that he hasn't been giving her as much attention as he had before. He'd been much busier than before, and he no longer took her for walks. He did really like how she wasn't afraid to express herself in any situation. He hadn't been like her when growing up. Then again, circumstances were different. Still, he had adopted a more joyful life during his days at the military police force. There were so many things he had learned from the environment. It was a pity he had chosen to throw away those values in favor of being a bloody murderer. Killing had become so simple for him, it still was. He had gotten used to doing it that he no longer felt as it was something fundamentally wrong. Life was precious. He had come to learn that. But it was still simple to take away, and in so many methods. He wouldn't say that people have become used to it. Only those who kill brutally and without hearts were used to it, but even a heartless killer like him felt pain when someone they loved was killed. He had felt despair knowing that his sister had been killed. So many people have felt the same pain as him when they have lost their loved ones. I'm sure you're more than happy to avoid getting your lessons, dear sister, Naruto said, knowing that his sister didn't really enjoy being educated. It wasn't to say she was stupid. She just didn't want to learn all the time. She had her moments when she could focus on learning. But on other days, her more energetic personality took over and she just wanted to have fun. Troublesome days those were. Naruto thought with a shake of his head. Rin grinned sheepishly. Well, that reminds me, Naruto said, looking over to Shin. You also need to get trained as well. Your mother says she has taught you everything you need to know about your future role as a priestess, but you don't know how to fight. I don't need to fight, Shin was quick to say. She would have people protecting her back at home. She just needed to use her powers and the rest would be left for her guards. Besides, a priestess was a noble person. She didn't have to do anything demeaning as to get her hands dirty by hitting someone. That was for the shinobi to do. Naruto tilted his head to the side and turned to Uzumi for an explanation. The redhead shrugged. She is the only child, and her mother loves her dearly. Naruto turned his eyes towards Shin. He gave her a sharp look before speaking. There are murderers and rapists everywhere. You need to be careful. A leader needs to be strong both mentally and physically. Whether you like it or not, I will train you. Your mother left you in my care, not just to experience life, but to make sure you're ready for your future roles. I will not send you back to your mother as a spoiled brat. Wait. Rin quickly butted in before Shin could finish speaking. There were stars in her eyes when she spoke. Are you going to train us, Oni-sama? You train us? Not a clone, but you. The girl inquired in a very slow tone just so her brother could understand what she was saying. Naruto nodded. Yes, he said. Before Rin could explode in joy, he added. It won't be anything brutal, but I need to make sure you can protect yourselves against danger. Besides, being physically strong makes life a lot easier. You don't need anyone to do anything for you, and you don't have to feel weak. He paused for a moment and waved his hands. I need to finish things with Uzumi. Can you give us time? Rin stared for a moment before nodding. The day after tomorrow. Uzu and training. She said those words in a very firm tone. I won't forget. Rin nodded and twisted around. Her gang followed her shortly. Once the kids were all gone, Uzumi turned to Naruto, giving him a stern look. You are very indulgent with your sister. At this rate, she won't excel in Fuinjutsu, and will not be a good leader for the clan. Naruto shrugged. I'm not her father or mother. Besides, I want her to live normally. She doesn't have to go through the harsh training Yoshino made me go through." He paused. "Well, it was useful. I understand you want her to live a normal life, but you mustn't forget that we are Uzumaki." The redhead sighed. "I will encourage her to study Fuinjutsu a bit more than she does. We are all good at it, and although I'm not an expert, I make my seals in a unique way, and that is because I learned the complex things from a young age." Later that day, Hokage Monument. People say that experiences make a person grow. You can be told of many things, but if you have not experienced them, you can never really change. Naruto said to Itachi, who was sitting on his right side, overlooking at the bright streets of the Hidden Leaf. He has experienced many things in his life, and he was still going to experience so many things. His lifespan would not end unless he decided that he needed to stop living, and even then, he could not really kill himself. His chakra would always regenerate after a couple of years, and he would come back to life. His only companion would be the Kyuubi and the many generations that would come and go within the Uzumaki clan. Still, Naruto didn't think that he would allow his life to go like that though. Once he was tired of living, he would have someone seal him away in a seal he could not break. He had yet to tell Izumi about the Kyuubi's actions, but he would tell her one day, and then she would have to create a seal for him. He had so much power that he didn't think that a seal created by his hands would be able to hold him for all eternity. "You are changing," Itachi said to Naruto. "I'm glad for it though." The Uchiha managed a small smile. "Well, I know why people get angry and hate when their loved ones have been killed. I was a little angry, but I don't think that I would have chosen to live my life in hatred over it. I'm simple that way. For someone like me with issues, it would have been easy to turn evil from it. I can even say that I don't have the capacity to eternally hate someone. But I have come to understand why Nagato believed that pain could unite this world. I have experienced loss, so I can understand why people resent my existence. I can understand it, doesn't mean I can empathize with them. Even so, if we are talking about trying to end things with just talks rather than someone dying, then because I understand their language, we can work something out." Itachi knew this language of peace through understanding. It was something that the Sandaime Hokage spoke about. The old man believed that true peace would only be achieved if people came to an understanding and united. But the peace before was only achieved through ceasefires and the balancing of powers. Had the other villages been in understanding with Konoha, they wouldn't have started with the war. Things were different because there had been no dialogue. Itachi really hoped that the cages would be open to start more dialogues for better understanding and cooperation in dealing with their problems. It would even be better when the cages were helping each other solve problems that didn't even include their own villages. If you understand that, do you really think that your ways will bring true peace? Itachi knew how Naruto was working. "I'm just following orders of the Yondaime Hokage," Naruto said with a shrug. "But this is something that even my father understands. Unless we take a firm hand, nothing will change. We only want to stabilize things before settling down to open dialogues. Even in a world where we want to understand each other, those guilty of crimes have to be punished. If we leave things as they are, these people won't know they have done wrong. We are not just beating them without telling them where they went wrong, we are also trying to show them that they have done something wrong. When you don't show them, they are only going to resent you for bullying them." Itachi's Sharingan looked up for a moment as he pondered on what Naruto had said. "Let us hope that it will work for the better. I cannot really see a better way out of this. At least we acknowledge that we see what we are doing can have negative consequences." The Uchiha said, "I heard you were leaving the village for Uzu. How long will it be for?" "About a week to 3 weeks," Naruto responded calmly. Itachi raised an eyebrow. This was far longer than what he had expected. He thought a week would do, but the redhead was planning to leave for that long. It was somehow since he wasn't just leaving with his sisters, but with Izumi as well. That long. Yes. Naruto said, with a slight nod. The village is doing just fine, and my clones are no longer needed for construction. Although the clan is heavily burdened by doing services for the Leaf, I think it will manage without me for a little while. Itachi could not offer his assistance, he had the Uchiha clan to worry about, and besides that, he was the commander of Anbu. His responsibilities were many and they required him to be around the Leaf at most times. When he was offered a chance to leave, it was only for some moments and special occasions. Are you satisfied with your current role in the village? Itachi asked. With these talks done, Naruto would no longer have a role to play. He would be on the side, with no important role to play in the Hidden Leaf. You have been promoted to Anbu Commander, and I am me. It is no problem. I already have a lot of work in my hands. Very soon, I will to start travel around the elemental nations negotiating for trade and partners. My project requires me to relate to many people to sell. Without connections, my business will not be a success. I played my role excellently during my days in military police when it came to dealing with both shinobi and civilians. In my role with the Uzu businesses, I have to pull out that mask. The redhead paused for a moment. That reminds me, I need a loan from the Uchiha clan. I need to pay the lease for the ships I leased from Kiri. Although the Mizukage has understood the situation, I would rather pay my debts. By making another debt? Itachi asked with a look on his face. Don't question the logic in it. Naruto was quick to say. I wanted to get it from Konoha, but the village is still going through its troubles. I consider us friends, loaning you money won't make me feel happy. The Uchiha said. Of course, I will still have to pass it through the elders, but it shouldn't be a problem. You still don't want me to buy into it. The Uchiha can be a silent partner. Naruto shook his head. I will give it thought. Itachi nodded. It would be good for our clan's relationship. My father has fought for the clans to be in friendly terms. Your disagreements with him might have caused things to stall, but we are still your one true ally and supporter. Just thinking about the village's politics made Naruto sigh. He really hated the art. It was bothersome and seriously a deadly thing. It wasn't just physical prowess that influenced people, but the art of politics could get the job done. Naruto wasn't winning the political battle, but he had the physical might and the villagers' support. Yet, that could be changed by some smooth words from some manipulative people. Maybe I will give a small percentage at a price. It would make more sense. Naruto said in thought. What is the agenda on tomorrow's meeting? Control measures and your father's plans for redrawing the village's rulebook as well as its structure. The marriage between Iwa and Konoha will also be discussed. It was scheduled for next month, but due to your pending leave, it was pushed back as it couldn't be held without you. Naruto wasn't surprised. He was the village's chief intel source, and not to mention, as things stood, he held more interests in the village's security than anyone else. Well, he could understand why he was becoming enemies with the Hyuga. They had been behind just the Uchiha, and now with Itachi in play and his role as Anbu commander as well as the Uchiha's monopoly over the military police force, they have become slightly normal with less to do within the village. The Uzumaki may not hold much power within the village, but they were still powerful. I hope it isn't going to be one of those meetings where we will have insults crossing over the table. Naruto said with a sigh. You don't help matters. Itachi said. He only started council meetings now, but he got the feeling that Naruto has not always gotten along with the other clan heads. Naruto shrugged with indifference. It has always been how things are. Because of what we know, we have not always been the most favored clan. Our secret ways of doing things has also been an obstacle to things. But I don't generally speak during meetings. The following day, Itachi was sitting just beside Sum on his third council meeting since he assumed the role of clan head for the Uchiha. It hadn't been easy change for him. Of course, there were some naughty people who had questioned his commitment to the clan, but there was really no one who could doubt his wisdom and strength or even question it. He had been attending clan meetings for a long time, so he knew what went around in those meetings. Dealing with people who sought to gain control of the clan had been easy. The Inuzuka matriarch spoke well with him, but when it came to Naruto, it was a different matter. He gathered that it had something to do with Naruto sleeping with her daughter. It was some time ago. He would have thought that she has dealt with it all. Perhaps there was something else to it. Aburame Nara and Akimishi clans kept things fair. They didn't show favor in anyone and stayed with the facts, not fiction. These were the people that Itachi had come to respect since he joined their lead. Naruto was sitting across the table, Heishi and the Sandaime Hokage flanking both his sides. The Uzumaki had his head resting on his right side, eyes closed. Itachi didn't find it odd, it was his usual behavior. Those closed eyes and relaxed body structure didn't mean that he wasn't alert on what was happening around him. The Sandaime Hokage finally walked into the room. Before taking his seat, the man said his apologies for being slightly late. "Sorry, I'm late. I had something to deal with," he said. His apology was met with a few grunts, silence, and a few nods. The blonde Kage sat down and placed his hands on top of the table before starting to speak. "I'm glad all of you came out for this meeting, even though it was pushed back," he said with a smile. "I'll get to it, starting with Uegakure. Kuretsuchi has decided that she will marry Itachi. We will begin formal negotiations soon. Itachi will have to handle most of it himself. I want to have things sorted out before the Kage Summit." "Is there any particular reason you chose Itachi?" Heishi asked calmly. He didn't mention Naruto, but he knew the redhead been in the picture. From the onset, given everything the redhead has done, he had known that the woman wouldn't choose the Uzumaki, and Minato must have known that, yet he presented the redhead as an option. "Who do you think could have been the right candidate for the marriage?" Minato asked the Hyuga. They didn't have to forget that Kuretsuchi was a Kage. Just because they were forcing the marriage on her didn't mean that they had to diminish her position of power and humiliate her. An action like that would have much more negative consequences to the marriage and to future relations. Kuretsuchi may hate them for the choice they had forced on her. Minato was willing to live with that, but humiliating her would not achieve anything good. They had to be smart in the decisions they took, or else everything else would fall apart and peace will never be achieved. His generation had to work hard to push the elemental nations into a position of openness. If they could not work toward that goal, the dream was as good as dead. For peace to be achieved, therefore, they had to come into decisions that would not only bring stability for now, but have a positive influence to the future. "I'm not saying there was anyone better." Heishi emphasized the words "anyone better." One didn't have to be a genius to know that it was a dig on someone not so far away from the man. "I just want to know the reason behind that decision." Minato sighed before leaning on his chair. There were varying reasons for the decision, and he had discussed it at length with the Sandaime. Itachi was just the best candidate for the position. He could not compare the Uchiha to his beloved son. They were two different personalities. Given Itachi's personality, character and views, with the focus not just on the present, but the future as well, he was the best candidate. Minato said. Shikaku explained in detail. "Let us look at this in all angles. There is no way that Kuretsuchi will not hold some resentment towards the Leaf for this choice we are forcing on her, and considering that she already hates us, it was therefore fundamentally important for the present and future relations to elect someone who could handle the situation. We have forced this decision with power. We will not hide this fact, but we are hoping that a person like Itachi will be able to shed light into Kuretsuchi. I find that she would be a remarkable person who is dead to all that is morally right if, in duration of her marriage to Itachi, she cannot see just how wrong her grandfather was in starting the war. A person like Itachi would, therefore, be in a good position to make her understand the difficulty in the choice Konoha had to make for the sake of a better future. Maybe she might not understand it, but we hope to form a relationship with Iwa that will be strong, and of course, the child in the equation will be insurance." "There you have it," Minato said to Heishi before looking around the table. "Does anyone still have a question about the reasoning behind the decision?" Everyone shook his or her heads. "I'm still surprised that you'd be willing to do this though," Inoichi said to Itachi. Bloodline wielders have always been protective of their bloodlines. Before the war, the Uzumaki skills were used excessively to protect the bloodlines. There is a chance that Kuretsuchi will refuse to give away the child once she has given birth. I don't think any mother would be willing to give away her child like that. The protection to guard our bloodline has not been removed. Besides, this matter is much bigger than the Uchiha. If this will be a step to ensuring Konoha's future and peace, I have no logical reason to stop this from happening. Itachi responded calmly. The Sandaime smiled with a nod. It was refreshing hearing the Uchiha speak. The Nidaime would have been surprised to see that an Uchiha like Itachi existed. That is much better than some people who are willing to put the village above their clans. Tsunade said. Naruto's eyes snapped open when the woman said those words. He knew the woman was talking to him, but he was tired of this talk. He decided against responding to it. It was not worth the effort and energy anyway. Tsunade's comments were just petty, that did not achieve anything good. He was just going to end up insulting the woman if he entertained her. What? Now I'm not worth your time? Tsunade demanded from Naruto. Your attitude is the reason we all know who is going to succeed. Your father is the Godame Hokage. Even though the villagers love you and show respect for what you did during the war, they still prefer Itachi over you. The same can be said about most shinobi population. Naruto merely shrugged nonchalantly. He had never shown any interest in becoming Hokage. Besides, if he so wished, he could still become Rokudaime Hokage after Itachi. He had a long life ahead of him. Tsunade didn't know, but he couldn't fault her ignorance. The Sandaime surprisingly stood up for the Uzumaki. Now. After everything that Naruto has given for the village, I don't think we should say such things. Tsunade-san, you and I are alive because of him, not just us, but our families as well. Can we really ask for more? Besides that, Naruto has never really shown any interest in becoming Hokage. Even if Minato were to choose him as his successor, you should know that he would refuse that offer. Tsunade had nothing to say to that because she knew the Sandaime spoke the hard truth that no one in this room could refute. With that out of the way, can we get back to discuss important matters? Minato said with a smile. Minato has never felt the need to intervene with a firm hand on the politics. He usually played a bystander when things like this happened. Naruto was his son, so to be impartial, he stood back and allowed them to do their talking. Besides, he never worried that it would get to a point where it would affect the decisions they had to make about the village. They will argue, but when important matters had to be considered, they all gave it their all. Minato cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. Once all eyes were on him, the Hokage spoke. The village's structure is going to take a few tweaks. Clans will be responsible for specific duties within the village based on capabilities. The Uchiha's role hasn't changed. The Uzumaki will take over the village's intel and torture division. I know I didn't speak to you about this, but this is for Konoha, and I figured you'd try to refuse if I gave you the job with just the two of us. I'm going to propose a joint intel operation with the other cages in the summit. The Uzumaki will have to connect all these nations in the sharing of information. The Inuzuka will head the Hunter Nin division. I'm still discussing specifics with Heishi, but we have so far agreed that the Hyuga's jurisdiction be from outside the village's walls. I mean that whatever happens with our shinobi outside the village walls, it will be the Hyuga's problems to deal with. Specifically, I want them to be the oversight body of our shinobi from Genin to Jonin. They will deal with Shikaku, as he will still serve as the Jonin commander. The Nara will deal with strategy as well as advisors to the Hokage. Aburame will assist the Uchiha, Hyuga, and Inuzuka in their duties. Akimishi have agreed to be first point of defense for the village as well as the intermediary between all clans, more like peacekeepers. This council will have oversight over all the duties of each clan. Once we have agreed all the terms, we will build 3 towers for military police force, Hyuga operations, and 1 for Akimishi and Inuzuka. I will also establish my own oversight agency, which will report only to me. This agency will have rights to all your duties to make sure that you are not abusing your powers. Kakashi will lead this agency. Are there any complaints? Inoichi was the first to complain. This is ridiculous. He shouted. What about my clan? Minato blinked a couple of times before he smiled. It might have slipped my mind, but Inoichi, you will head another branch of T, and you will still work with Ibiki. While the Uzumaki will be responsible for gathering intel from within and outside the village, it will be up to your division to handle interrogations and supplying intel to other clans. Due to the nature of the Uzumaki's work, they won't be able to meet with all clans, so one of them will be in contact with you. Oh, Inoichi said as he calmed down. He turned to Naruto. Looks like we will continue working together. Naruto merely nodded in response. But he didn't like his father's plans. It was like his father felt that he might one day feel the need to move his clan back to Uzu. The man was purposefully giving them a huge task to keep them grounded. Everyone clan would be fighting for the village. The issue of who will succeed me. Minato started. I will still hold the final say on who succeeds me, but if the council is unanimous in disagreeing with me, I will have to pick another successor. In times we get a dictator as a cage, and when the council is unanimous in its decision that this person is a dictator, it shall have the power to remove the Hokage and elect another one. I will announce my successor to the council in due time and my advisors, as well as the Sandaime, who will take the responsibility of grooming that person for the job. Days later. Uzushogakure. Home. Rin said with a wide smile as she looked at the green plants rooted through the ground, stretching as far as her eyes could see. This was what a farm looked like, and this was her home. The air was different, it was refreshing and felt natural. It wasn't polluted by anything. It has only been a few minutes since she came to this place, and yet, Rin as if she was at home. Naruto had yet to even show her the ruins that her mother had lived within before they became ruins. This was truly her ancestral home. It felt natural being here. Konoha was okay, but even though this place wasn't surrounded by the noises of people, Rin thought she could still live here. Azumi was quick to say something before the girl allowed her thoughts to drift. Home is Konoha, Rin. She said firmly. Don't let your brother's thoughts get into your head. This was their home, but breaking away from Konoha wasn't going to do them any good. Azumi loved her clan, and she was certain that if Naruto proposed they move back to this place, the Uzumaki would listen to him. He had the total command of the clan, and none doubted his power to think that they would suffer the same fate as their ancestors if they came back. You say that, yet outside the Uzumaki, you don't have any friends. Rin pointed out. Azumi blinked. She couldn't give a compelling reason as to why Konoha was home. What the girl was saying was indeed the truth. It was the same case for most Uzumaki anyway. The clan was secluded from the rest of the village. It was only now that they were opening up their gates. There had been times they used to call the streets of the Hidden Leaf the outside. She woman shook her head, but offered nothing in response to Rin. She looked at the other girls and spoke. I didn't welcome you, but welcome to Uzu. This island once housed the almighty Uzumaki clan. Karin, you must be proud of being Uzumaki. Your blood is precious. We are not called one of the prestigious clans for nothing. Our history is vast, but the years have not been good on us. Since we faced destruction, fate has not smiled upon us. But Oni-sama is changing things. Rin was quick to exclaim. Karin rolled her eyes. You really worship your brother, she said with a shake of her head. You have an internationally famous father, and there is never a day you speak highly of him. It is all your brother. Rin stopped moving as she thought deep. She then shrugged. My father does all the great things outside home. When you look at his stupid smile and when mom yells at him, you really can't praise him too much. It was almost laughable how her father could shrink so tiny that he could hide behind her shadow when faced off with her mother's righteous fury. Karin had no response for it. She merely shook her head. Azumi looked to the side as she sensed the real Naruto's presence. The redhead was walking along Ujido. The blonde Jinchuriki was saying something to him. Azumi didn't try to figure out what they were talking about. You done on your side? He nodded. Yes. He said. Karin Shin. He said to the two girls. This is Ujido, a former Kumo Kunoichi. She is now a resident of Uzu. He turned and looked towards another direction where there was nothing but trees. The village is on the other side of the forest. Let us. The moment he said those words, Rin was upon him, her left hand grabbed his. She wanted to be on his shoulders. Who is going to carry the others? Azumi can carry Karin and Ujido can carry Shin. Rin was quick to say. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for more interesting videos, and also check out the other playlist. Hope you would like them too.